This is Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano. The perpetuation of your liberal entitlement. I love that new phrase. Thank you, Antonin Scalia.
Yeah. We'll see if there's more perpetuations of entitlements this week.
Yes. Hopefully we don't get a perpetuation of heterosexual entitlement.
There you go. There you have it.
Yes, we have a big
Well
show. What's that?
I said that was well put. I like that.
We have a big show in store for you this morning. Al Brooks and Carl Willis of the Prince William County Democratic Party. They are the co-chairs of African American Outreach for the local Democratic Party. Dean Dafis of Marriage Equality USA, and Ian Millhiser of the ThinkProgress blog, Center for American Progress. Their amazing blog that we love to cite here on Talking Left. Big show. And as usual, we like to tell you about some news you may have missed during the week. Some of our favorite stories that we picked up. A great one announced by the AP is a big union protest right smack dab in the middle of the Las Vegas Strip. 98 people were arrested as part of a civil disobedience protest. They were part of the culinary union that's demanding a contract from the Cosmopolitan Casino and Hotel. Nearly 100 people were arrested for blocking traffic for about an hour. They stayed in the street during rush hour, and 100 people were arrested out of a crowd estimated about 1,500 people. This is the first time members of the union have displayed civil disobedience, and it's the second protest in just this year alone. Earlier this year, 54,000 members held a one-day picket outside of the casino, and that first one was the first protest on the Strip since 2003. Many of the unions there, or many of the casinos there, are unionized. The Cosmopolitan Hotel and Casino is one of a few that isn't. The union reports that it appears the hotel is delaying the union contract because they are going to sell the casino and don't want to be burdened with the contract. The one point I have to say I take issue with AP regarding this story is one sentence. Culinary members receive free health care and are paid above average workers. Housekeepers in most Strip hotels start at $16 an hour and receive a pension. First of all, the health care is not free. They work hard for it, and they deserve it as part of their benefits. Second of all, if $16 is that far above average in a place that is a tourist attraction, that's very expensive to live.
And billions of dollars funnel through every year.
Exactly. It's not like these people are making $100 an hour. There's no opposing sentence in this story about what the casino makes per year or how much the CEO makes or what the prevailing wage is in the area.
Or what the living wage is, how much you, in order to live in that city, how much you would have to make.
Exactly.
In order to have a standard, middle class lifestyle that allows for growth for coming generations.
You're talking $16
I'm talking about the American
an hour.
dream as it used to be.
$16 an hour.
Yeah,
it's really not that much money.
No.
Everybody should be making that, the minimum wage federally should be at least that much.
If you're comparing it to the lowest of the low, sure, it's better. But, unions have generally been on the forefront of getting better work conditions and pay and benefits for all of us. So,
exactly, which benefits everyone in turn. I really take issue with that. I feel like it's shoddy journalism to put that sentence in there and not put any of the opposing statistics.
Can you say the sentence again?
Culinary union members receive free health care and are paid above average wages.
It's a true sentence.
What's the average? And is the health care free?
It says free.
Don't they pay union dues?
I don't know, but it's not an opinion sentence.
I think it's without the opposing statistics. What's the average?
It could just be a fact.
What's average to what?
What does the sentence say? Above average.
It says they receive free health care.
Right.
Really? They don't work for it?
Well, they don't pay extra for it. According to that sentence, we don't know. I mean,
and they make above average wages.
Well, then the average would be less than $16 an hour.
Without opposing statistics in there?
Opposing statistics. Statistics are statistics.
Facts
are facts.
Without the facts of how much other workers make? Average for what?
Are you
average for the
lying?
Community?
Not to get in a skirmish this early on a Sunday, but are you saying that the AP report is lying, that the average is above 16 or it is 16?
I'm saying it was lazy reporting.
Oh.
I'm saying it's somebody told that reporter it's above average. Or they read it somewhere.
And we know this.
They don't cite this. Well, I don't know. Where do they cite?
It's not a term paper. They don't have to footnote their article. Do we have evidence that it's untrue?
We'll look into it.
Okay, then.
All right.
How's that adrenaline going already?
Good morning, Shano.
You can tell by the look on your face. I go, do not go there already.
It is too early to screw with me. Okay. In other protest news, and this is a story we talked about last week, the Detroit emergency financial manager.
Oh, yes.
Reverend Jesse Jackson has joined the fight against the emergency management law and is calling for mass nonviolent protests in the city to fight against this small d democratic law.
Yeah, and there already had been some acts of civil disobedience, slowing down traffic on the major freeways, 94 and 75 there.
Right.
Which I think is excellent.
Jackson and several other opponents are pledging to file a lawsuit this coming week to challenge the constitutionality of Michigan's new emergency financial manager law. And Jackson says that, his quote here, "We marched too long and bled too much and died too young for the right to vote to have a governor. Take away the impact of our vote."
Sure, it's incredible. There's the attack on voting rights in general, but then when you do get to vote and you vote someone in, they don't count.
Well, not only you vote something in, but you vote out this law,
right? And
it doesn't count; it comes right back.
Thank you for your ballot. We're going to ignore it. Coming up next.
Yes. Yes, Michigan's Republican Party is calling Jackson's protest and his words irresponsible.
Oh.
Yes, they say it's, quote, it's disappointing that all the Reverend Jackson wants to do is provide some sound bites and stand in the way of necessary solutions to fix Detroit's problems.
Well, first of all, sound bites can come in quite handy when you're trying to get a point across, because that's what the media tends to take it,
It's actually what the GOP specializes in.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, they turn out the bumper stickers like there's no tomorrow. And, that's kind of a condescending statement. How did that start? We're disappointed.
It's disappointed.
Oh, we're so disappointed.
It's disappointing.
Go to your room, Reverend Jackson.
Exactly.
Go to your room.
Shame on you.
Shame on you.
Shame.
For standing up for people's right to vote.
Shame on you. Yes. Jackson made a great point, and he said, Detroit cannot be reduced to a rummage sale.
Nice.
And he's right. He warns that, the mayor and Kevin Orr, the new financial manager, could sell off acres of land to the richest buyer, who would likely turn them into vacant lots,
the
commercial
Welcome to Detroit
real estate
sign, they just drape over it to,
exactly.
clearance sale.
And I would even worry, I'd go a step beyond that and worry about the commons,
Absolutely.
Rights to water, rights to, public lands, et cetera.
I went to the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor, spent time in Detroit. Now, this was in the late 90s, down by the waterfront, amazing restaurants, beautiful, looking over the, towards Windsor, Ontario. I mean, and there is, Detroit has so much to offer that just selling it off to the highest bidder does not do it justice and takes it away from the people, and that should not be done.
Yeah, well, good on Jesse Jackson and the Rainbow Push Coalition to stand up for the people of Detroit and stand up for subverting democracy in that city.
stand up for not subverting democracy.
Yes, stand up to subverting democracy. See what happens when I try and use big words
negatives.
at 9 in the morning on a
Triple
Sunday?
negatives will throw you every time.
In New Hampshire, the state house in that state has voted against private prisons. Yeah, this is a story. We have covered the atrocity of private prisons for years on this show and our
Bo
previous
Hodai
show.
has joined us to talk about some of it, and
Yeah.
there's a report actually in the New York Times this morning about solitary confinement for people picked up for immigration violations. I mean, they're such atrocities when you have that kind of control over a person.
Yeah. The industry alone stands to rake in $5.1 billion just from detaining illegal immigrants alone.
So there's a profit motive to people
Just
becoming
a little.
criminals.
$5.1 billion, I'd say that's a profit.
Yeah.
Yeah, the House on Thursday voted to forbid the executive branch of that state from privatizing the state's prison systems. The vote was 197 to 136 in the democratically controlled House. However, it does now go on to the Senate, where Republicans hold a slim majority. So there's no certainty that this bill will be finalized.
Now, a few years back, they had a vote in New Hampshire that was quite the opposite, did they not?
Yes, it's an abrupt shift in New Hampshire where it was just last year the legislature considered a bill. They didn't pass it, but they considered a bill to send the entire male prison population to private prisons in the state. So, we have talked about it so much on this show. The profit motive in prison leads to lots of interesting, 3 strikes, you're out, tougher sentences. The path from high school to prison is often more prominent.
Sure. They need clients.
Yeah.
So you use mandatory minimums and all kinds of draconian sentences in order to fill the prisons.
Right.
And you're making criminals where you really could be making citizens because people mess up. And there are situations, we're not against imprisoning people, but the way that it's done and the unequal way that it's done, the two-leveled justice system and so many other, and then there's just the corruption that can occur that has been documented and has occurred in terms of judges getting kickbacks for sentencing people. I mean, there's so much wrong with putting profit into this where your real goal should be rehabilitation, punishment, I agree, but rehabilitation as well.
Yes.
And that is contrary to the profit motive of the people running them.
Private prisons have been found to be riddled with violations, as far as overcrowding, emergency safety procedures, cleanliness, not to mention that there's just some things that shouldn't have a profit motive. Healthcare, our commons and prisons. It's too big of an impact on people's lives.
We're going to privatize our courts? Seriously.
Right.
Is a board of directors going to essentially?
It's a step away from it. It's privatizing the final decisions that our courts make.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So good on New Hampshire. Hopefully their state senate upholds that the bill and keeps private prisons out of their state permanently. That would be awesome. It'd be a win for civil rights. In some frustrating news, the Senate had their votorama this week.
Yeah.
They voted until about 5 in the morning. They
Votapalooza 2013.
They voted on over 70 pieces of legislation. One of them that kind of went under the radar, I think, as far as the major news media, was the Keystone XL pipeline. In a non-binding measure, senators endorsed construction of the Keystone XL pipeline in a vote of 62 to 37, which means that 17 Democrats joined all of the Republicans in favor of allowing the Keystone XL pipeline.
We should put up a list of those 17 with the blog post. I'd be interested to know.
Absolutely.
Because I hadn't heard that story. I hadn't looked it up
I just really hope they don't find a means to force Obama's hand.
As you said, it's non-binding.
It's non-binding. But, circling back to that Michigan law, and I'm not sure how this would change for a federal law, but if they attach appropriations to it, if they they put it as part of a spending bill. You know, look at how Obamacare passed. Look at how the Bush tax cuts passed.
I understand you're talking about reconciliation.
Yeah.
That's to get a lower vote threshold to end debate without having to invoke cloture. It's just who has the final say? What part of our government has the executive authority to approve this? It's a state thing plus the Department of Interior, and I think Department of State because it's international. I think that's where I don't know that they can force.
I just think we need to be calling Congress. We need to call our senators every day.
Are you wondering if the Senate and the House could get in the way of it? I think the only way they could do that is if there was some kind of federal money going towards it. And they could cut that off. But obviously, if they're voting 62 in favor, that ain't happening.
Yeah. Well, speaking of the Senate and that vote-a-rama, one of the bills that people were frustrated that didn't make it in was Dianne Feinstein's assault weapons ban. Last week, Harry Reid announced that he would not include the assault weapons ban as part of gun regulations that would be considered. He instead went after increasing penalties for gun trafficking, and in the final bill, he did include a measure of including background checks. So another one we have to call. Harry Reid, for anybody who doesn't know, has quite a high rating with the NRA, and it's unsurprising that he didn't pursue tougher gun regulations. This is supported by the majority of the country, the vast majority, about 90%, even according to ThinkProgress, 87% of gun owners and 74% of NRA members. So this is the majority upon the majority upon the majority, even by those who are pro-gun.
But shouldn't we then, if we actually had a representative Senate, shouldn't 84 of those 100 or 74 of those 100, therefore, being able to break that filibuster that Harry Reid's so worried about?
And instead,
and if it was included in it, would that essentially be a poison pill?
Right. That's why he took it out. And I know I'm frustrated as well as many other progressives and Democrats and even some Republicans. But he took it out because he knew that he wouldn't get anything passed. So that, in addition to the NRA actually calling Newtown families with robocalls. We listened to it. It's not as bad as one would expect when you hear that.
It's your phone call. They're taking away your Second Amendment rights.
Right.
But you made the excellent point of who they're calling.
Right.
It's not just Newtown. It is. But go ahead.
They did not screen out people who could have either lost a child at the Sandy Hook massacre or were related to someone who lost a child. So in addition to just being insensitive and inappropriate, it went above and beyond that by possibly affecting those who just lost children in that horrible disaster.
Yeah.
So anyhow, we have got lots of good stuff in store today, so don't go anywhere. You're listening to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano, and we will be right back. Stick around.
Joe and Skeeter too. Two gun lovers with nothing better to do. They sit around the house, pick their nose and watch Fox News. And here's what happened when they decided who to schmooze. They met a congressman east of old El Paso.
Pohanka Acura's huge March sales event is going on now. Get one of the new 2013 TLs for as low as $199 per month. Or get the brand new 2013 MDX for only $254 a month. Come find out why price and selection have made Pohanka the world's largest.
This is Kimon Freeman, host of Speak Easy and co-founder of We Act Radio. Suicide is a very serious problem in today's challenging world, whether with our troops abroad or with everyday citizens within our own society. Before you take your life into your own hands, tie a knot at the end of your rope and call the suicide hotline toll-free at 1-855-320-LIFE. That's 1-855-320-LIFE. It may just be the most important call you ever make. You talk, we listen, and together we survive.
It's like a jungle sometimes. It makes me wonder how I keep from going under. It's like a jungle sometimes. It makes me wonder how I keep from going under.
Hi, I'm Tom Morello. Some call me the Night Watchman. In the case of Mumia Abu-Jamal is at a crucial stage. Please go to freemumia.com to find out more information about how you can help Mumia Abu-Jamal and other political prisoners. Night Watchman out.
Would you like to secure stable employment, affordable, high-quality child care, or an opportunity to serve your community through meaningful volunteer and internship experiences? If so, UPO is the place for you. Hello, I'm Andrea Thomas, Vice President of Administration and Chief of Staff for UPO. As the Community Action Agency for Washington, D.C., UPO has proudly served the residents of Washington for the past 50 years. Annually, we impact the lives of nearly 100,000 Washingtonians, 100,000 people advancing their education, securing employment, maintaining housing stability, and investing in their communities through volunteerism. Our vision is a Washington of thriving communities and self-sufficient residents. To learn more about our services and how you can partner with us or donate, visit us at www.upo.org. UPO, where we are uniting people with opportunities.
Let me tell you who to blame. Blame the boy lying at your feet, his body oozing life through the hole in his stomach where the bullet tore him apart. Blame him for challenging you, for not looking away and for not backing down when you pulled out the gun. Blame your mother for bringing you into this world when she was but a kid herself and for dragging you up, not bringing you up. Blame society for not giving you hope. Blame your father for not being there, the man who looked after himself instead of looking after you. Blame the gun in your hand for making you a target, for making you more likely to be picked on. Blame the dead boy, blame your mother, blame society, blame your father, blame the gun, blame anyone but yourself for not being strong enough to put down the gun, to break the cycle.
All right. Express yourself.
You're listening to Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Welcome back to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano. So we're going to play for you in just a couple minutes an interview we did earlier this week with Al Brooks and Carl Willis. They are the co-chairs of African American Democratic Outreach for the Prince William County Democratic Party. And in talking about that interview, both before and after, Shano and I realized something very important, that United citizens, each of us, can take on Citizens United. How? Citizens United allows corporations to spend unlimited amounts of money in the political process. Huge, huge sums that, purchase political ads, purchase candidates.
Sure.
And many of us can't compete with
None.
that economically.
Just about none of us.
Right.
None of us.
Even when we join forces.
Right.
However, it's pretty much a cliche, but it's a fact that time is money.
Right.
Everybody's time. If, say, you make $10 an hour, well, if you donate an hour of your time to a cause, in essence, you're giving that cause $10.
It's a $10 contribution.
So that's the way we fight Citizens United. Elections are not every 2 years or every 4 years. And Shane, I'm stealing your line on this because it was brilliant. Politics is constantly affecting our lives, and we should constantly be affecting politics. We do that with our time. We can't compete against the huge, dark, dirty money of Citizens United, but we can fight out in the open with our time every day, every hour that we can give. And if you get 100 people out there for that 1 hour, and everybody's time is, say, $10 an hour?
I'd argue the average would be more like 30, but
okay,
if actually people were paid what they're worth.
So, you get enough people out there, and that equates to thousands of dollars in political contributions. Some of us can't even afford to contribute $10 to a campaign, and that's okay.
And 2, 3 jobs, working 16, 18 hours a day, it's hard.
Yeah,
but writing a letter. I mean, these are all things that we know, but just in thinking of Citizens United and that cliche together, that it's not just donating time. You're making a political contribution to affect the political process on an ongoing basis. You don't have to do it every single day. You just do it as much as you can and find that issue that you really care about. You don't have to. You don't have to be comprehensive. You don't have to take on the world.
And you don't even have to,
you can do anything. You can't do everything, but you can do anything.
You can feel small and unimportant when trying to write letters or phone call or call Congress, things that you don't see an immediate response on. But if you can talk to your neighbors, your friends, and you can get them involved in one protest, one rally, get them to read about one issue, you've impacted politics locally around you. And you can do that every day.
You may not be able to get someone in Capitol Hill to switch their vote.
Right.
But there may be someone else in your life that just learned something.
Right.
Or they know that they at least have one really ticked off constituent that is not going to vote for them because of the way they voted. It's little tiny micro movements that when put together is a movement in and of itself.
Exactly. And that's why we're going to, many people who used to listen to our old show remember Get to Know Your Grassroots Candidates.
Right.
And that's a great segment, and we'll probably feature that from time and time again.
But those are election years.
Right. Those are election years.
We're going to do it ongoing.
In the process, in the interim, we're going to be United Citizens. We're going to try and speak with people like Al Brooks and Carl Willis, who you'll hear coming up in just a few minutes, every chance we get, whether it be people working in the political process or people just like you and me who are just trying in any way they can to affect change. And this is how we be
and we're going to
United
donate
Citizens.
Time on this show.
Exactly. And we encourage you to do it as well. So stick around. You're listening to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano, live on Radio or Not, SoFlo Radio, and of course, We Act Radio. When we come back, you're going to hear our interview with Al Brooks and Carl Willis. You can check out their site at pwcdems.com. We'll be back in just a few minutes.
Whoa! Awesome! Totally awesome! All right!
It's Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Apparently, Representative Paul Ryan missed the outcome of last November's presidential election. Oh, wait, wasn't he on the ballot in that election as Mitt Romney's running mate? Well, yes, but less than 5 months later, Ryan seems to have forgotten that he and the Mittster were soundly rejected. Maybe the trauma of losing, including losing his own hometown of Janesville, Wisconsin, has caused his memory slippage. Whatever the cause, it's embarrassing to see him now trotting out the very same Republican budget proposal that he wrote last year and put at the center of the Romney-Ryan national campaign. The same nauseating budget extremism that induced the great majority of Americans to upchuck. Ryan recently headlined a Washington media event for the re-release of this bucket of right-wing hash. It includes turning Medicare into a we-don't-care privatized voucher system that would deliver seniors into the tender clutches of giant insurance corporations, forcing the elderly to pay more for less. Also, in order to save the super-rich from even the slightest tax increase, Ryan again serves up a mess of cuts to food stamps, Medicaid, and other vital programs for the poor, while simultaneously jacking up the tax burden on both the poor and the middle class. Then, to make his package even more odious to the general public, he cluelessly reissues the far right's cry to repeal Obamacare. Hello, Paul, reality calling. Obama thoroughly thumped you and Mitt on this issue last year, remember? And since the election, Obamacare has grown in popularity, with several Republican governors now seeing the political light and embracing Obama's signature health care reform. This is Jim Hightower saying it's time for family and friends to circle around Paul Ryan for a sanity intervention, gently trying to pull him out of the rabbit hole he's got himself stuck in.
If you like these feisty pops of populism that Hightower zings out on the airwaves, check out the Hightower Lowdown. Jim's monthly newsletter provides the in-depth lowdown on what the greed heads of Wall Street and the boneheads of Washington are doing to us behind the scenes. With Hightower's saucy Texas humor and truth-telling populist perspective, the lowdown literally can lift you up. And get this, you can have the lowdown delivered to your mailbox or email each month for only $15 a year. Yes, 12 issues, only $15. Check it out, hightowerlowdown.org.
You're listening to WIN, Workers Independent News, a production of Diversified Media Enterprises. I'm Doug Cunningham. Working families at over 100 events today are calling on Congress to immediately repeal the sequester federal budget cuts. The cuts, totaling $1.2 trillion over 10 years, went into effect March 1st. The AFL-CIO says these cuts will cost 750,000 jobs, and Republican hostage-takers are demanding more devastating budget cuts that slash more jobs and cut programs that working people need to get back on their feet. AFL-CIO President Rich Trumka says that working people across America have sacrificed enough in the form of lost jobs and furloughed pay. He says it's time for Congress to demand that the corporations in the richest 2% pay their fair share. For a complete list of the events urging sequester repeal today, go to americawantstowork.org. As workers protest the sequestration cuts, cleanup at nuclear-contaminated sites could be delayed by furloughs triggered by those cuts. Jesse Russell has more.
The sequester cuts are beginning to have an impact on the country's most contaminated nuclear site. More than 2,000 workers at Washington's Hanford Nuclear Reservation received notices this week telling them they'll start being placed on rotating furloughs. 250 workers at the site received pink slips. The furloughs directly impact non-unionized workers at the cleanup site. Due to their contracts, unionized staff have more of a say in how departments can make them take furlough days. The workers are currently removing toxic and radioactive waste from the site in advance of a new treatment facility being constructed. There are some concerns about cleanup being delayed due to a number of underground tanks that are leaking. Hanford is the country's largest cleanup operation, eating up a third of the nation's nuclear cleanup budget.
The SEIU, black immigrant activists, and racial justice organizations are rallying on Capitol Hill in Washington Wednesday to demand that the distinct needs of Caribbean and African immigrants be addressed in any forthcoming immigration reform. SEIU says black immigrants comprise approximately 10% of the foreign-born population, but have been forgotten in the immigration debate. An estimated 700 progressive African Americans and black immigrants from the Caribbean, Africa, Latin America, and throughout the globe will join Clergy United to Save and Heal in the rally. It's being called the Black Communities for Immigrant Justice Rally. U.S. Congresswoman Yvette Clarke of New York will give a congressional briefing on the issue. After the rally, the black immigrants will visit key members of Congress working on the immigration reform issue. This newscast made possible in part through underwriting support from the IBEW.
Workers Independent News puts workers and their unions on the national radio news airwaves every day. To help keep labor's voice on the air, go to laborradio.org.
You've been listening to WIN, Workers Independent News. For more information, visit laborradio.org.
A boy born in Joplin, Missouri was fascinated by anything with wheels and a motor. The odds of him going on to fascinate millions with his talent, 1 in 260,000. The odds of him having 15 career NASCAR victories, 1 in 1.7 million. The odds of a child being diagnosed with autism, 1 in 88. I'm Jamie McMurray, and my niece has autism. Learn more at autismspeaks.org/signs. Brought to you by Autism Speaks and the Ad Council.
You're listening to Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Welcome back to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano. We are very excited to be speaking with our next guests. Two members, not one but two members of the Prince William County Democratic Party, the African-American co-chairs, Al Brooks and Carl Willis. Thank you both for joining us today.
Well, thank you, ma'am. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. I don't know who wants to start here, but Al, perhaps, why don't you tell us a little bit about your work with the Prince William Democratic Party and the issues that you gentlemen are fighting for?
Well, as a Democrat and a member of the Prince William County Democratic Party, we fight for those issues that impact the African American and minority communities within our party and within the community here in Prince William County.
And how is it that you both are getting African-American voters really involved with the local politics, something that I think every county, every city has trouble with regardless of race, but you guys are specifically trying to involve the local community. How are you doing that?
I personally go out and try to engage persons, minorities, African-Americans specifically, in conversation regarding issues, education, the voter ID law back last year, and other things that impact them. Also, educate them on how they can get involved and make a difference in terms of what type of things that they can get by being a part of the organization that make the decisions.
Absolutely. It's extremely important, especially the voter ID law. We've covered that Supreme Court case very closely on this show. Carl, why don't you explain a little bit about what the turnout was like for 2008 or 2012 and how that may be different coming up in a midterm election?
Well, Danielle, thank you once again for allowing Al and myself to speak with you. In essence, 2012 was the turnout was excellent, and what we're trying to do is we're trying to keep our members engaged well into the midterms, because traditionally we have not been very good at maintaining that intensity. We tend to stay home during the midterms and not turn out in the numbers that we do in the general. Myself personally, I met with Al last year, and I was impressed by what Al had to say. And I've always wanted to get involved. I've been here in the community for about 19 years now. Raised 3 kids in the Prince William County school system, and I primarily try to get through a lot of the younger voters here in the county by really mapping some of the issues to the things that really affect them, because I think a lot of times they get discouraged and they believe that their vote doesn't count. So why get involved? No one wants to hear what I have to say. And I think it's important to get across to the young voters that, you know, your vote is your voice.
We saw in 2010 nationally how important midterm elections are and what type of lasting effects they can have. And with one right around the corner, you know, we definitely need to be involving everybody of all races. But with these voter ID laws and the Voting Rights Act recently before the Supreme Court, you know, African-American voters, I think, need to really be paying attention. And such a valuable right is at risk again. In 2013, it's insane to me. Was the turnout among African-American voters, and do we need to improve it?
Well, in 2010, the off-year election, the turnout I could only describe as unbelievably low. In 2008, we had a turnout of 51.6% presidential. In 2010, the areas where minorities would make the greatest difference, the turnout was 18%.
Wow.
18%.
And how do we improve? What methods? You know, I realize we have to get people involved in local politics by explaining what it means to them, by, showing the issues that are important to them and how they can affect their local situation. But are you guys using specific messaging, or is there a particular issue that is resonating with the African-American voters in Prince William County, something that is really grabbing a hold of people and making them want to get involved?
Well, you have several different techniques that we used. We had a well-planned process for getting people out to vote in 2012, which we did not have in 2010. We talked about those things that impacted them, especially because in the off-year election, you have the situation where persons don't come out to vote. The same people who legislated for the ID law and other laws that really has an impact on you, that's when they're elected. They also, during that period, will gerrymander, meaning changing the districts. That's why you have a Congress that doesn't look like the overall community.
I think that's an issue in Congress as a whole. I mean, Congress has not kept up with the American people as a whole. You know, Congress doesn't look like America. It doesn't look like, a breakup of, beautiful different races and genders. It doesn't look like America. It doesn't look like a slice of America. It looks primarily like white men. And I think that is something, as that changes, it seems like Congress gets more progressive. And I think that's very important to the quality of the legislation that's going to get passed. Carl, just to throw it to you for a moment, you work with getting younger people involved. I think regardless of race, these midterm elections are so important. How do we get everybody involved? How do we get young people motivated? I hate to use the cliche, but out from in front of the TV, out from in front of the computer, and actually supporting local candidates, running for local office, fighting for local issues, because that's where it all starts. What are your suggestions there?
Well, Danielle, we try our best to get these younger, not only just the younger voters, but to increase our participation in this democratic process by relating those everyday things, everyday issues to them and how they really affect them. You mentioned the voter ID law. You would be amazed. I think our Republican friends really take for granted the hornet's nest that they stirred up with their challenge to the voter ID law. People don't like, if it's a right, people don't like to have their rights taken away, regardless of what side of this thing you're on. And that really inspires people to really get involved and ask, how may I help? And then you work with those. For instance, my oldest son just moved to the area, and he was here less than a week, and we've gotten him involved. He's 26 years old. He can help me reach that demographic, that 18 to 27-year-old. That demographic is very important to us. We're trying our best to get them motivated by relating some of the things that really affect them, their lives, and the ones that they love. So that's how we're affecting this.
Absolutely. We are, just to remind everybody, we're speaking with Al Brooks and Carl Willis of the Prince William County Democratic Party, the African American Democratic Outreach co-chairs. Where can people find information about local candidates and what they stand for, who they should be supporting? I know we have the website, pwcdems.com. We'll put that link up with the blog post for our show. Is there other resources people can use?
The Democratic Party has a website here that you just mentioned. That will give you some of the information. We also have an outreach mechanism that we're going to be using too very shortly to talk about all of the issues confronting our communities.
The United States represents everybody, and everybody should be getting involved together. Participation in this vital process and the work that you two gentlemen do is so very important right now, and I can't thank you enough, not just for joining us today, but for the fight you guys take every day out there to make a change and support the most important issues we could be fighting for. So thank you guys so much for everything you do.
Well, thank you for allowing us to participate with you.
Absolutely. Al Brooks and Carl Willis of the Prince William County Democratic Party. You can find out all the information at pwcdems.com, and we'll keep you updated with all of the issues and local candidates that you should be supporting. This is Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano. We'll be right back. Stick around.
Everyone expected just a piece of fluff, but we wanted to do something important. You know, issue stuff.
It's Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Okay, astronaut, you're up. You'll be meeting with Wish Kid Brandon.
Roger, Brandon.
His wish is to see a space shuttle launch.
All systems are go. We are clear for liftoff.
This year, more than 27,000 children will be diagnosed with a life-threatening medical condition.
And, Cowboy?
Yes, ma'am.
You'll be meeting with Shayla at a dude ranch in San Antonio.
Let's saddle up.
Some will miss school. Some will miss time with their family and friends.
Princess, are you here?
Oh, yes. Thank you so much for rescuing me from that evil witch.
Juliana wishes for a princess-themed room makeover.
That sounds magical.
But with your help, the Make-A-Wish Foundation can lift their spirits and give them a special kind of hope.
Pirate!
Yar!
You're up for Isaac's wish.
Aye, aye, Captain.
The wishes of thousands of children are waiting to come true.
You can help make my wish happen. Visit wish.org today.
My name is Joe Thompson. I'm 29 years old and I have a career that I love as a systems analyst. Career. It still sounds cool to say that word. I never could have gotten on this path without a college degree. And if the college me were here, he'd tell you.
I never would have gotten to college without Big Brothers Big Sisters. I could have ended up anywhere, on the streets even. But college? Joe Thompson? Not likely. My big brother helped me out. He taught me I could do anything, at a time when a lot of people were saying just the opposite.
And to a 7-year-old, that means a lot. My big brother's name is Phil. And Phil is the reason that this 7-year-old grows up to be a systems analyst.
Whether you donate money or time, you're helping Big Brothers Big Sisters help a child. And that can last a lifetime. Start something today at BigBrothersBigSisters.org. Brought to you by Big Brothers Big Sisters and the Ad Council.
Hi, this is Brad Friedman, your friendly citizen investigative blogger, journalist, troublemaker, muckraker, and all-around swell fellow from BradBlog.com. Join me for the Bradcast every Wednesday from 3 to 4 p.m. 1 hour of troublemaking and muckraking ripped from the pages of BradBlog.com and sometimes from the dark recesses of my mind. We'll have investigative interviews with newsmakers, we'll call out the liars, frauds, and phonies, and we'll even give kudos to the good guys if we can find any. Stories you won't hear anywhere else. We'll report on politics, elections, election reform, mainstream corporate media failure, media reform, global warming denialism, and everything before, during, and after. Join me for the Bradcast every Wednesday, now a full hour, 3 to 4 p.m., right here on Pacifica Radio's KPFK, and coast to coast and around the globe on kpfk.org.
Take Action News is proud to be sponsored by Healthcare for America Now. HCAN is a national coalition of more than 1,000 groups in 50 states, representing 30 million people. HCAN works to promote, defend, implement, and improve the Affordable Care Act at both the state and federal levels. They also try to protect Medicare and Medicaid, increase corporate accountability, and confront forces that seek to take away critical services. HCAN believes in creating jobs, not cutting programs people depend on. HCAN runs comprehensive issue campaigns that mobilize people at the grassroots and define the public debate. HCAN is fighting to protect, implement, and improve the new health care law through national and state-based legislative and regulatory campaigns built on grassroots action, public education, communications, policy analysis, and groundbreaking research. HCAN has become a respected voice and national leader on health care while continuing to focus on aggressive field activity. Support HCAN, Healthcare for America Now.
You're listening to Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Welcome back to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano. Thank you wherever you are checking us out, radioornot.com, SoFlo Radio, or, of course, We Act Radio, 1480 AM, WPWC in Washington, D.C. Many of us have been following the news going on in Cyprus. Banks being closed now about a week to prevent a run on the banks of people withdrawing all of the funds in their account to avoid being taxed in a levy to shore up the banks.
Sure. Cyprus is in a bunch of trouble. The banks are in trouble. The banks themselves.
Right.
Because of their holdings in Greek banks that have taken a downward turn. And they're essentially, they need $10 billion. And where they went to get it, of course, the European Union, because they're in the European Union. And they said, okay, we'll give you $10 billion, but only if you put $5 billion of it up.
5.8. Yes.
So now they're trying to figure out where to get this $5 billion. And the first idea that was floated and became public last Saturday, was we're going to tax all the deposits in Cyprian banks. Under 100,000 euros was going to be 6.75%. Above, it would be 9.9. Of course, everyone's like, you ain't taking my money.
Right.
So everyone ran to the ATMs, emptied the ATMs. Monday was already a bank holiday. They just extended it, and it's been going on since.
Right. And this story has really gotten a lot of national headlines, and it's changed quickly. Pretty much international. Pretty much every day, there's new news and new developments in this story. As of now, few solutions. Yes. As of now, they have voted on, the Cyprian parliament has passed a total of 9 bills covering 3 elements of the plan. One creates a solidarity fund that includes nationalizing pensions and state assets. So basically future gas deposits. They have a large natural gas reserve off Cyprus. The approval of capital controls to prevent large withdrawals from Cyprus. So essentially putting limits on how much people can withdraw, whether or not they can close accounts, whether or not they can transfer money in and out of accounts.
You better believe there's going to be runs.
Exactly. So they have essentially stopped it. And the issue of the bank levy is still up for vote. As of now, they're going to vote on that tomorrow morning.
I'm confused about the natural gas.
Well,
because I had read, because it is moving quickly, that they had ruled that out because it's co-owned with some Turkish interests, that they couldn't do it and didn't want to. That was kind of off the table, but you're saying that was passed.
That was, along with restructuring of the banking sector. They're essentially going to put all the bad assets in one bank and all the good assets in other banks.
Sounds familiar.
Doesn't that sound familiar?
Oh, yeah, TARP.
Yes, but the hot issue, the hot button issue of whether or not people will be taxed on their bank savings is still up for debate. And the news on this is pretty much changing by the day. As of yesterday, the levy was possibly going to be about 15% and only on deposits over 100,000. Everybody else would be exempt. And then just this morning, the New York Times is reporting that the tax could be 20% on deposits over 100,000 and 4% of all other deposits in the country, including uninsured, including foreign banks.
Including the 26 foreign banks that operate in Cyprus.
Right. The European Central Bank and the IMF have given Cyprus only until Monday, tomorrow, to raise the bailout money, or it says it will cut off funding to their banks, meaning that their banks could probably collapse and could take down some other banks in the Eurozone. This is a big deal. And, people in that country, as well as all throughout the EU and even all around the world, are very concerned about the domino effect that could happen if Cyprus banks go down.
To give you an idea how big a chunk of that $5 billion is, the entire GDP, yearly GDP, gross domestic product of Cyprus, is only about $23 billion.
Wow.
Now, there are a lot of foreign investors. They talk about Russian investors and things like that. But that's another interesting twist on that there is some speculation that Germany doesn't like Cyprus being the banking
of
destination of choice.
Right.
Bring your money here.
Right. Well, and Cyprus is a major financial hub in the region because their banks hold so much of the Eurozone and Russian assets. Russian deposits are huge in that country. So 4% of those foreign deposits could secure this $5 billion they need to get the bailout. But the question that we're hearing here in the U.S., especially from right-wing media, is could this happen here? Could Congress enact a tax on all of our bank accounts?
Would they have to? Would our deficit and debt get so crushing that we'd have to go to the EU for? We'll describe why it isn't in the next segment.
We're going to get into that in detail in the next segment because the Senate has finally passed the budget. It's the first one in 4 years that actually passed. Now, budgets are non-binding.
Yeah, it has much to do with how things are going to be run is not passing one at all. It's
exactly.
just a political bunch of malarkey.
Exactly. But all this budget debate is certainly worthy of discussion given what's going on in Cyprus, and we're going to explain how these are related and what would have to happen for something like this to happen here. So don't go anywhere. You're listening to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano. We will be right back with more. Stick around.
A beautiful place full of wonderful things just waiting to be experienced.
It's Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
It's Tuesday, March 19, 2013.
Let's set up an energy security trust that helps us free our families and our businesses from painful spikes in gas once and for all. We can do it.
On the one hand, Obama moves the environmental ball forward. On the other hand, maybe not so much. Power failure at stricken Fukushima nuke plant, plus wind turbine sickness caused by anti-wind propaganda.
All of that and more straight ahead. From BradBlog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
Yes, the smart car is lightweight, fuel efficient, and quiet, but it also has its drawbacks, like that awkward moment when you hit Chris Christie in a crosswalk, and he asks if you're okay.
Oh, man. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, speaking of Republicans, perhaps the dumbest one in Congress, Steve Scalise, Republican from Louisiana, said this at CPAC over the weekend about President Obama, who he says, quote, wants to keep pushing this green energy. Scalise said he talked about global warming at his inauguration. I found it ironic that the president was wearing a trench coat. It was so cold, but he's talking about global warming.
There doesn't seem to be any shortage of stupidity in the Republican Party.
Irony that it's cold out, and so there's no global warming. It's a myth. Just so you know, that's where the Republicans in Congress still are, Des. I guess you have a lot of work to do.
Oh, I guess we all do. Speaking of work, these quick headlines. The Denver Post reports that an oil spill discovered 10 days ago near Parachute, Colorado, has spread an underground plume of toxic hydrocarbons.
Oh, lovely.
That threaten to contaminate spring runoff, but they still don't know the source of the oil.
I'd say it's Steve Scalise.
There you go. The Interior Department has forbidden Shell oil from drilling in the Arctic. That is until Shell can demonstrate to the government that it has the equipment, the ability, and a plan for all contingencies to drill in the harsh extremes of the Arctic. And they mean it for real this time,
Oh, yes,
guys.
they really mean it.
In the ongoing BP oil spill trial now in New Orleans, rig owner Transocean acknowledged that its workers could have done a better job to prevent the explosion on the rig that killed 11 men nearly 3 years ago. But Transocean says the ultimate responsibility for the disaster lies with BP. Last week, Transocean pled guilty to a misdemeanor charge and agreed to pay a $1.5 billion fine.
Anyone go to jail?
Nope. Power failure scare at Fukushima. Plant operator TEPCO says it has now restored power to 4 spent nuclear fuel storage ponds at the stricken Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant after an unexplained power failure on Monday. Those were not the reactors, but the pools that store the spent nuclear fuel rods, which do not have double backup power systems.
So the power that kept the water cool is what went down?
Yes.
And it's back up.
Yes. In the Middle East, the tiny country of Abu Dhabi in the United Arab Emirates officially opened the world's largest solar plant on Monday, a massive solar thermal plant in the desert that will generate electricity for 20,000 homes, which the government says will free up more oil for the country to export. Good news, several fish populations off the U.S. coast that were near collapse have now rebounded ever since a landmark 1996 law enforcing total catch limits was imposed on the fishing industry.
So big government succeeded again.
Yes. Wind turbine sickness is caused by anti-wind lobbyists.
What?
That's the conclusion of 2 new studies out of Australia. They found that homeowner complaints of illnesses from nearby wind farms, everything from headaches to herpes, are clustered in areas where anti-wind farm lobbyists have been spreading fear of illnesses from wind farms. It appears to be entirely psychological.
So the people complaining about wind farm sickness are only those who have had a good talking to from the anti-wind lobby?
That's exactly right.
Nice.
Finally, schizophrenic environmental policy news out of the Obama administration. First, White House aides gave a strong indication that President Obama is inclined to approve the controversial Keystone XL pipeline, and then more reports said that Obama's EPA is probably going to delay issuing historic new rules that regulate greenhouse gas emissions from new coal-fired power plants for the very first time. But then, in a speech at Argonne National Laboratories in Chicago on Friday morning, President Obama called on Congress to establish a $2 billion energy security trust that would go into research for alternative fuels for cars, and it would be funded by royalties from oil and gas drilling on public lands.
So this is good. The fossil fuel companies are going to have to put money into a fund. Is this meant to mollify environmentalists when and if the White House decides to approve the Keystone Pipeline?
It could very well be that that's the case.
For more on that story, those tea leaves, and the other things we couldn't get to today, please check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. Don't forget, you can download us anytime via iTunes, listen to us on your mobile device via Stitcher or the TuneIn radio apps. Find us and like us on the Facebook and follow us 24/7 on the Twitters at Green News Report. From bradblog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
Every move you make, every vow you break, every smile you fake, every claim you stake, I'll be watching you. Since you gone, I'll be lost
This is Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Welcome back to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano. We are live on RadioOrNot.com, SoFlo Radio, and of course, We Act Radio, 1480 AM.
We're live unless we're being replayed or you're listening to the podcast.
Yes. Yes. If you're checking out the podcast or checking out the YouTube videos, thanks for watching. Please be sure to like us on Facebook and Twitter as well while you're over there at talkingleft.com. So the Senate finally passed a budget.
Yay.
$3.7 trillion budget, which looks to set up some interesting negotiations in the coming months.
Yeah.
Which will mean pretty much nothing gets done. In a 50
trying to put that one together with Paul Ryan's budget in the committee,
there's a little bit of space between those two.
What concerns me is that they'll get in there, and I can't imagine Democrats would go for this in the committee. They would get in there and say, okay, here's all the cuts the Republicans had in the House. Here's all the cuts the Democrats had in the Senate. We can agree on those. We'll just do those, and the rest of it, we're done. Goodbye.
I think you could be right.
It concerns me that we only get the cut side of it, none of the revenue side that's in the Democratic bill in the Senate.
Right.
But we won't do as many cuts as the Ryan budget.
The Senate voted 50 to 49 to pass the Democratic
50?
budget. 50 to 49.
50.
Yes. Interesting.
Now, but that passed.
But it passed.
How did that do? How did that happen?
How did it not need 60 votes?
Because it was a budget.
Because it was a budget.
Now, we should probably go through this again. We talk about filibuster. One thing that cannot be filibustered is a budget. Now, it's not that a filibuster, and everyone talks about cloture, filibuster all gets screwed in your head, in my head as well. Most bills, except for budget bills, you can talk and there's debate and debate and debate and debate and debate.
Right.
And then you're going to end debate. Okay, now we're going to stop talking about this, and someone will say, I object. Now, they don't have to keep debating. They just say, I object to ending debate, and that's called a filibuster at this point.
Right.
And in order to override that, to say, no, we're really going to end debate, you have to file a motion for cloture, and if you get 60 votes on a motion for cloture, debate ends no matter what. So that's how we get the 60-vote thing. On a budget, however, you cannot just talk and talk and talk and talk. There's not endless debate on a budget. There is a set number of hours that are put forward that say, these are the number of hours for debate on this budget. And at that end, debate will end. You cannot filibuster. You cannot keep talking, so you never need to file that cloture motion. It just automatically ends. It's kind of like the difference between football and baseball. Football, when the clock's over, the game's over. Baseball, you still have to get 3 outs and 9 innings and all that. Does that make sense?
And it can go, yes.
So that's why it only needed 50.
Right.
Like most bills should.
But as the budget is a non-binding agreement now, both budgets, the House budget and the Senate budget, go to committee for negotiation, and likely they'll never meet, or as you said, Shane, they'll agree all the cuts and none of the revenues.
And the president doesn't sign it, and it still has to go through every single piece that's in those budgets. Has to go through an appropriations and a revote to authorize those appropriations, so it can.
Right. It's essentially a goal. It's a document of what we would like to happen. That's about it.
Case in point, look at Paul Ryan's budget, which would never pass voucherizing, getting rid of Obamacare, but keeping the cost savings, but none of the benefits. They know darn well it's purely a political document to have an argument about, so they can go out and say, we Republicans, we balance the budget. Democrats never do.
Exactly.
And they're banging those actually now. John Boehner's a super PAC that he's associated with now running those ads. Republicans balance the budgets. Democrats never do. That's all they want.
Right.
The talking point.
And that balanced budget talking point is also the most dangerous part of the House budget. You know, the cuts aside, voucherizing Medicare, which we can all certainly discuss at length, and easily come up with a ton of reasons of why it's bad for the country, for the economy, for senior citizens, for the middle class, for everyone.
We can debate the wisdom of any and all of these cuts as individual cuts.
Right.
But the reason behind them is the real crux of it and how it interrelates with Cyprus.
Right. That balanced budget could mandate a debt to GDP ratio, saying that we cannot, exceed a certain number, a certain percentage of debt to GDP ratio. Well, wouldn't you know, that's exactly how Cyprus got into the mess it's in.
To be a member of the EU.
Right. Because they are stuck under the thumb of the European Central Bank and the IMF. They must meet a certain debt to GDP ratio in order to be a member of the EU, to use the currency, the euro.
Because otherwise, all Cyprus would have to do to fix these banks is say, we're going to issue debt in our Cyprian dollars.
Right.
and we're going to create $10 billion, much like our Fed has done, and we're going to give it to the banks, and the banks will be fine. We're going to open the banks, and everyone's cool, no taxes, blah, blah, blah. We're done.
Right.
But they can't because they have this artificial cap put on them.
Right. The European Central Bank has done this. This is why Greece has imposed austerity, why Spain is struggling with I think the last time I checked, it was 28% unemployment, because an outside entity, the European Bank and the IMF, have demanded that these countries stay within what they consider a reasonable amount of debt. Well, the Republicans, the very same ones that have now come onto the airwaves saying that this tax is a Democratic proposal, it's a Democratic ploy because of social programs. They're the ones instituting policies, or at least attempting to, in this country that could lead something like this to happen here. We have Bill O'Reilly talking about it, and he's getting it wrong. Oh.
You've also had Republicans for years saying we need a balanced budget amendment.
Right.
Saying we must balance the federal budget every single year. And then what happens is when you do have an economic downturn, you do need government spending to increase to keep you from going into a depression. You can't.
You can't spend.
Because your Constitution has been changed to say you cannot do this. And there's no reason. That is shooting yourself in the foot.
Right.
The reason that Cyprus and Greece and many of these countries are having such problems is they've given up their economic sovereignty. We still have ours. That's why we're not like these European countries. We still have our own currency. We've talked about this week after week. We are not like this.
Right. But by tying our hands with demanding a balanced budget, or God forbid passing a balanced budget amendment, when our government cannot spend in those emergency situations when it needs to, that's what opens the door to these austerity programs, these huge taxes on individuals, and, layoffs, pension nationalization, etc. And they're the ones putting up these dangerous, tactics that could lead to something like this here.
So if you're going to make analogies, our government is nothing like Cyprus.
Right.
But the Republicans are acting an awful lot like the EU and the IMF towards Cyprus.
Yes.
In requiring things that are not necessary when we have a struggling economy right now that's trying to pull itself out of the Great Recession, that they are doing, they're shooting our economy in the foot just for the sake of, because they've run around for years saying the budget's on fire, the budget's on fire. Now that you have public opinion saying, we're in a budget debt crisis. It's a crisis. No, it's not. In last Sunday, when you asked there were a few Republicans, do we have an immediate budget crisis? No. They know that we don't.
They know. And then you have people like Bill O'Reilly coming out and falsely making the analogy that this is because
of entitlements.
Because the Cyprian people get so many social benefits that the government can't.
It's one of those
afford
socialist
them.
meccas with all those safety nets that cost so much, and therefore, this is amazing. I'm going to play the clip here. I think I am.
And one proposal from the Cypriot government was to forcibly.
First of all, the proposal was not from the Cypriot government.
And one proposal from the Cypriot government was to forcibly.
It wasn't forcible. They didn't put a gun to anyone's head.
No. And one proposal from the Cypriot government was to forcibly take money out of personal bank accounts on the island, steal it from the folks, steal it to pay their bills. Now, the outcry was immediate, and it will not happen, but the lesson is important for Americans. Greece, Italy, Spain, Portugal, Ireland, now Cyprus, all broke. And other European nations are close. Why? Because they're nanny states, and there are not enough workers to support all the entitlements these progressive paradises are handing out.
Okay. Wrong. First and foremost, it's not the government that is broke. It's the big banks that are broke. The big banks...
Much like our banks back in 2008, and our government came in to bail them out.
Exactly.
Their banks are having problems for many of the same actions, or actually more of European Union problems, and the government can't come in and help because of the regulations.
Exactly. The government cannot just print money as we can do here. They cannot issue debt or affect interest rates, much like our Fed can do in this country. They are bound by the requirements from the European Central Bank. And it is the banks in this country that got into trouble. They bought up lots of Greek assets when Greece was, up and coming and doing great, and then they got hurt really badly.
Right. And I can guarantee you, if the Greek banks and their shares continued to rise, they would keep all those profits.
Oh, yeah.
As soon as there's losses, then we're going to take 6 or 9 or 10% or 20% out of your accounts. We're not going to put 20% in if they do great. Trust us.
Right. So, all this talk from Republicans about balancing the budget is way more dangerous than any debt or deficit that our country can rack up. It's the putting arbitrary limitations on our economy that say it must meet certain ratios. It must meet certain debt to GDP percentiles. That is far more damaging to our economy than any amount of spending our government can do. And Bill O'Reilly and the right that want to say, be worried the government's going to tax you. Well, guess what? If it can't spend to boost the economy and it has to get revenue, they're going to get the money from somewhere.
It's true.
So
it isn't because of entitlements in Cyprus, and it wasn't the government that it's imposing it.
No.
He wants to make it sound like a tax and spend liberals.
That's exactly what
and
he
we
wants to make
predicted
it
this.
sound.
It wasn't that hard to predict. It's very unpopular, so therefore it's just like the Democrats here in the United States, but it's nothing like. It's exactly what the Republicans, but it takes some nuance and understanding of the facts, not Bill O'Reilly's forte.
Well, yes.
They always talk about the resiliency of our economy. Conservatives always do. How we can always rebound and rebuild. There's a reason for that. It's because we have economic sovereignty and that we have a government that knows when to step in and provide the necessary cash infusions and spending programs that can bring our economy back, and then kind of prime that engine that then, the private companies can pick up on as things start to, as the engine restarts.
And it'll be very interesting to watch, what happens in Cyprus and how it affects the Eurozone as a whole, because that economic sovereignty in many of these nations would allow them to get out of the financial troubles that they're in. And if anything was going to lead to the breakup of the European Union, these economic problems are at the forefront of what could cause that. So
there's a little bit of brinksmanship, it seems, going on. It's just a matter of, I think, who's going to blink first.
Exactly. So
it's way beyond my talk radio pay grade. You have to ask the smarter people what's going to happen, but something's going to happen in between today and tomorrow.
Yeah, and we will keep you posted
live
here on Talking Left every time we get a chance. So don't go anywhere. You're listening to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano. Much more in store, including 2 more great guests and Trust Busters coming up next. Stick around.
I'm David Schuster of Take Action News, and you're listening to my favorite show other than my own, Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
This is your boy 50 Cent, and I'm here with Scott.
Hi there.
Scott's a true family man, but he might not catch your attention right away, so I'm lending my voice. Now, what happened, Scott?
Well, 50, I never thought it would be me. I was just your everyday, middle-class working American. But then I lost my job and still had a family of 4 to feed. I was afraid. I was expecting people to be judgmental about me needing help, but I didn't run into any of that. The food bank is about more than just meals. It's about encouraging and helping people when they need it most.
Today, 1 in 6 Americans don't know where their next meal is coming from. Scott here could be your neighbor, your co-worker, your friend. He's just like you, and you probably don't even know he's struggling. But you can make a difference in Scott's life today. So visit feedingamerica.org/hunger and find a local food bank to help.
I'm Scott.
And I'm 50 Cent. Together we are Feeding America.
A message from Feeding America and the Ad Council.
Hugo Chavez Frias, presente. He came from humble beginnings, from among the teeming millions in Venezuelan poverty, and joined the army as much to make a living as to serve the people. He and a group of mid-level military officers staged an unsuccessful coup in February 1992 against the corrupt regime of President Carlos Andrés Pérez. In years, the man who led the coup, would be elected president, and Hugo Chavez would proclaim Venezuela as home of the revolution of the Latin American liberator, Simón Bolívar, who fought and prevailed against Spanish colonialists for Latin American independence early in the 19th century. For Chavez, Venezuelan independence meant economic independence, to use the vast natural wealth of the nation to better the crippling poverty experienced by millions in the barrios. He did so to the howls of the rich elites and foreign investors. In 2002, rich elites with U.S. support staged a coup against Chavez, but it was short-lived. For within 3 days, Chavez was once again in control, buoyed by the support of the teeming masses of Caracas, who saved his life, his presidency, and his vision. The people saved Chavez, and he worked to save and better their lives. Having escaped death, Comandante Presidente Hugo Chavez gave his life to the socialist cause and devoted the revenues from Venezuela's oil wealth to creating a more egalitarian society. For 13 years, he worked to deepen the Bolivarian revolution, and he saw a leftist tide sweep Latin America. Hugo Chavez, who survived coups and counter-coups, lost his final battle to cancer. Hugo Chavez was 58. From Imprisoned Nation, this is Mumia Abu Jamal. These commentaries are recorded by Noel Hanrahan of Prison Radio.
Hi, I'm Patrick Ewing. I'm here giving something back to the community. I went to school here. I lived here in the community. You know, I have an office here on Minnesota Avenue. I always loved D.C. You know, just trying to give something back to the community of Ward 8 in this community or from around the country. React Radio, do something.
You're listening to Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Welcome back to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano. We are live on RadioOrNot.com, SoFlo Radio, and of course, We Act Radio in Washington, D.C. You may not know this, but President Obama is the first full-term president in more than half of a century to not have appointed a single judge to the D.C. District Court of Appeals. Not one.
D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals, which is a very, 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 very important appeals court. Now, this is the one that we've been talking about recently when it comes to the NLRB and recess appointments. This is kind of if you're going to have a case with the federal government, it's generally filed in D.C. federal court. It goes to this court next, and it's kind of the direct pipeline to the Supreme Court.
Right. This is
a big deal.
This court hears all challenges to government agency regulations. So as Shane just mentioned there, the NLRB, the EPA, very important agencies that are responsible for regulating corporations, keeping pollution out of our air and our water.
Union decisions.
Right. Also, FDA, protecting our food supply. All of these type of legal challenges are heard in the District Court of Appeals. Well, as it stands now, the court has 4 Republican appointees and 3 Democratic appointees.
So there's 7 of 11 are filled. So there's
right.
4 openings.
Right.
And shockingly, when they only have a 1-vote margin, the Republicans, they're not going to let 1 Democratic appointee through.
Right. 2 of these 4 vacant seats have been open since Obama came into office, and 1 seat has been vacant since 2005.
It's ridiculous.
Yes. New York attorney Caitlin Halligan was one of Obama's first nominees to appoint the seat that's been vacant since 2005. She recently withdrew.
Recently, as in Friday, and they put this in the Friday trash.
Yeah. She withdrew her own nomination because the Republicans have opposed her twice.
Mm-hmm.
So this very court that helps decide, helps rule on corporations that are out of control. Big, huge corporations like Monsanto and Walmart and, the big
as long
banks.
as it's an agency dispute.
Right.
They have another appointee up that, and I actually have had the pleasure of seeing him argue in front of the Supreme Court. He's the Deputy Solicitor General.
Yes. Srinivasan.
Sorry. But, yeah, he's
Yeah, I'm sure I mispronounced that. He is a former corporate lawyer and Obama's second pick.
But right now he's Deputy Solicitor General.
Right. His Judiciary Committee hearing is coming up in the next few weeks, and already Republicans are requesting more information about his role in a Housing Act case as U.S. Deputy Solicitor General. So already they're trying to find stuff to block his nomination on.
Of course. It doesn't matter who it is.
It's just astounding that this very important court, Obama in almost 5 years, has not gotten one nomination through. And as you said, Shane, it just so happens that right now it's stacked in the Republican favor.
And they certainly don't want it to go the other way.
No.
And this is why filibuster reform, especially when it comes to appointments, was so important.
Yes.
Because if that 50 vote plus the vice president would have been enough for advice and consent, then we would actually have, this has been a long-term, many decades, part of the conservative war to get very conservative judges, and when there was a Democrats appointing just block. And over time, because these are lifetime appointments, you can get a bunch of very conservative justices out there.
I just hope that and I hope this first part doesn't happen, but if a Republican is in office and tries to make these appointments, the Democrats block them as well. There should be 11 judges on this Court of Appeals, and according to John Cruden, who is the director of the Environmental Law Institute, the court has so many judges because it hears such a large number of important cases. And he says that they will now take longer to resolve any issue they are reviewing because the issues are very complicated and require a lot of attention, and there's just not as many judges to split up the work.
They do not decide easy cases.
Right.
In determining that recess appointments, we just to recap, that recess appointments can only happen in a very short period of time between congressional, sessions. Not when they're adjourned, but when they're in between sessions, throwing out a few NLRB recess appointments and one for the Consumer Protection Board.
Right.
Who now is being filibustered in the Senate.
And one of the major agencies that this court is reviewing right now is the EPA regarding Obama's second-term climate change agenda. And, the
because
EPA...
he couldn't get Congress to act.
He doesn't need Congress to act. He can use the EPA to make a lot of changes that could positively affect our environment. And this court has the capacity to hold up many of those decisions. But it's proof right there with the EPA that there are ways Obama can affect things going on in our nation without Congress. And there's many more that most people don't know about. And that's why we started a new campaign called Trustbusters. We're going to tell you all about it next. So don't go anywhere. You're listening to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano. Trustbusters coming up next. Stick around.
Everyone expected just a piece of fluff, but we wanted to do something important. Issue stuff.
It's Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Great news, people. As a recent headline puts it, household wealth back at pre-recession levels. Oh, joy, we're all rich again. Or not. The article attributes the gain in household wealth to surging stock prices. But before you start ripping up your floorboards in hopes of finding your household share of this bounty, note that the wealthiest 10% of Americans own 80% of all corporate stocks. They gained wealth, not you. Meanwhile, those financially stretched Americans who are struggling to find a job are literally being toyed with by the corporate powers. Today's massive backlog of unemployed and underemployed workers allows corporations to bring in hordes of top-quality applicants for one job. They force these seekers to return 5, 7, or more times for senseless rounds of interviews. Then, the company whimsically decides not to fill the opening at all. From Google to Starbucks, major corporations have roughly doubled the duration of their interview processes in the last 2 years. The New York Times tells of one fellow who applied for a video editing job. He was run through a gauntlet of 9 interviews and made to undergo psychological and personality exams, plus a math quiz and a spelling test, after which the company simply closed the opening. The job-dangling corporation, on the other hand, can simply force existing employees to shoulder a heavier load, while it trifles with applicants. In corporate speak, this runaround is laughingly called looking for the purple squirrel, setting absurd job standards that no one in existence can meet. This is Jim Hightower saying, even a dog knows the difference between being tripped over and kicked. The way workaday Americans are being kicked around today is revolting, both in the sense of being abhorrent and in the sense of inducing a revolt.
Need an antidote to the progressive blues? Want some good news about how grassroots folks are rebelling against the corporate powers and winning? Well, here's an easy-to-swallow pill for you, the Hightower Lowdown. Hightower's monthly newsletter will give you the lowdown, even as it lifts you up. It's 4 pages a month, jam-packed with facts you can use, actions you can take, and Jim's own Texas humor, all for only $15 a year. To become a lowdowner, go to hightowerlowdown.org.
You're listening to WIN, Workers Independent News, a production of Diversified Media Enterprises. I'm Doug Cunningham. As postal worker unions gear up for the March 24th National Day of Action to save the Postal Service, the Postal Service has targeted 5 large post offices in New York for possible closing. The Postal Service will explain its plans at a Manhattan Borough Board meeting on Thursday. Chuck Zlatkin of the American Postal Workers Union says communities in New York City would feel a heavy impact from the closings. Elected officials and historic preservationists are pressuring the Postal Service to reconsider. The post offices targeted for possible closure are the Bronx General Post Office, Old Chelsea Station, Tito Puente Station, Washington Bridge Station, and Peter Stuyvesant Station. American Federation of Teachers President Randy Weingarten says the union is deeply disappointed that the assault weapons ban will not come to the U.S. Senate floor for consideration. Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid says the assault weapons ban doesn't have nearly enough votes to pass. Weingarten said assault weapons have no place in a civilized society because their only purpose is mass carnage. She says banning them would go a long way toward preventing horrible atrocities like the one at Sandy Hook Elementary School in Newtown, Connecticut. Furlough notices continue to roll out in wake of sequestration. Jesse Russell has more.
Pentagon workers will start receiving their furlough notices today. Most of the 800,000 civilian workers in the Department of Defense will be impacted by the sequester cuts and are expected to be required to take furlough days that will amount to a pay cut of up to 20%. Civilian workers at Scott Air Force Base in Illinois are currently being notified that they'll be required to take 1 furlough day per week, starting in April and extending through September. Estimates suggest the furloughs could cost Southern Illinois as much as $28 million in revenue. Even major operation centers are being hit by the sequester cuts. Cheyenne Mountain, which plays an important command role along with Peterson Air Force Base of the North American Aerospace Defense Command, will also be seeing civilian workers taking 1 unpaid furlough day per week.
In New York City, hundreds of faith leaders and clergy are supporting a drive by low-wage fast food restaurant workers to raise their minimum hourly wage to $15. Fast food workers at Burger King, McDonald's, Papa John's, Taco Bell, Pizza Hut, KFC, Wendy's, and Domino's are organizing a campaign to raise their wages and the right to form unions without employer intimidation. There are an estimated 50,000 workers at those fast food restaurants in New York City. The faith leaders are mobilizing their congregations to adopt restaurants in support of the workers' campaign. More information is available at fastfoodforward.org.
Workers Independent News puts workers and their unions on the national radio news airwaves every day. To help keep labor's voice on the air, go to laborradio.org.
This newscast made possible in part through underwriting support from the IBEW. You've been listening to WIN, Workers Independent News. For more information, visit laborradio.org.
Today in school, I learned a lot. In chemistry, I learned that no one likes me. In biology, I learned that I'm fat and stupid. In English, I learned that I'm disgusting. And in gym, I learned that I'm pathetic and a joke. The only thing I didn't learn in school today is why no one ever helps.
Kids witness bullying every day. They want to help, but they don't know how. Teach them how to stop bullying and be more than a bystander at stopbullying.gov. A message from the Ad Council.
You're listening to Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Welcome back to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano. You know, everybody thinks of FDR and the New Deal when you think about spending and investment and moving this country forward, right?
Progressive congressional and executive reform that helps the nation and the economy.
Right. We always
The New
hear
Deal.
FDR. We hear we need a New Deal.
Yes. And a lot of people were saying, will Obama be the next FDR?
Right. But we've come to realize that we need someone before the next FDR. And maybe we can push Obama to be that person. We need another Teddy Roosevelt, another trust buster.
It's true. It's true. And we were talking last segment about how President Obama is using the EPA to enact policies, or to not even enact, to affect policies when it comes to energy that he cannot get through Congress. And Congress goes crazy. Oh, you're a king, blah, 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 blah. But he's doing it under the laws that have already been passed.
Right. Without breaking up these big companies.
Right. Well, but I was trying to make the analogy that we have a problem right now with Citizens United. We have, in so many of our business sectors in our country, 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 actors who dominate that sector: banking, energy, transportation, communication, health, all things we need. We need. So it's not just it's a desire type of demand. It's a need demand in order to survive in this economy. You need transportation. You need communications. You need health, obviously. You need banking. You know, go get a job, get a paycheck, and don't have a bank account. See how much, some check cashing place is going to take out of it. Right. Because there are so few actors, they have incredible power, especially when you put it together with Citizens United. Now, Citizens United to get rid of takes not just an act of Congress, but an amendment to the Constitution, and I am all for that. That is a huge hill. I think we should keep pushing that rock up that hill. There have been amendments that have passed in a very short period of time, but that's a different route. We have a different suggestion. Using laws that are already in place, laws that were passed over a century ago, some of them.
Right.
And pushing the executive branch and the agencies under it to do something about these mega corporations, because they are abusing the corporate structure, they are abusing the political process, they are corrupting the political process. And if they weren't so darn big, they wouldn't have as much power.
And they're abusing consumers,
They're abusing workers.
Big time.
Because they're so gigantic and because they kind of like a high unemployment rate.
Right.
They can get higher and higher productivity and pay, compared to inflation, lower and lower wages, less pensions, less benefits, less health care, less per hour. And you're stuck with it because you have a high unemployment rate, and they like it that way. Look at the stock market. But it's because we have a bunch of conservatives who say, we love the free market, let's deregulate, and the markets will fix everything. The markets are stacked, and they are not free. I challenge anyone out there, even if you have a good amount of money in the bank, go start an insurance company tomorrow.
Right, go start an oil company.
Good luck.
Go start a transportation company, a phone company.
Right. Because of the incredible infrastructure and amount of money it takes.
Right.
There's barriers to entry. You think back to the healthcare debate. When we were talking, first, we, I think, as progressives, would like a single payer. The insurance companies, you're going to cut us out of this deal? No way. So they stopped that. Then there was single payer. The one entity that could actually introduce some competition, that there wasn't a barrier to entry, a large pool of money that could actually create an insurance company, was the federal government. But those few companies were able to stop that through our Congress. And I don't care what the Republicans say, oh, we need more choice. There's hundreds and hundreds of insurance companies. Bull. That's part of their corporate structure and corporate manipulation, that they spin off these little derivatives. But there really are, there's Unity, United, Kaiser. There's not that many. And they've kind of divided up the country.
Yes. There really is very few.
But there is a solution.
Right. Without breaking up the big companies, without busting the trusts like Teddy Roosevelt did, we likely would have never seen the New Deal.
Right.
We wouldn't have had that FDR.
You had the Gilded Age, and then some of that power was loosened by busting up those mega corporations,
right,
which led the way to be able to have an FDR.
Right. So we need to start using the laws that are already on the books. We know nothing is going to get through Congress. We know that Congress is broken and the president can't get anything new through. So let's start utilizing what's already in place. Let's start reviewing laws that go after these huge corporate power structures, break them up, and make the next New Deal possible. Everybody keeps hoping Obama will be the next FDR, but more importantly, let's make him the next Teddy Roosevelt.
And it's going to take pressure.
Exactly.
Because it would be, what we're planning on doing here is over the next couple shows, maybe 5 shows, maybe, I don't know, as long as we're going to keep talking about it. But
yes.
We're going to talk about these laws that are out there. Everyone knows about Sherman, the Sherman Antitrust Act, but there is so much more to it. There's so much nuance. There's so many different ways. We're going to talk about how it has been used, how it can be used today, how it's done, who does it, how it's been successful. And I'm not just talking about, everyone knows about AT&T, but there's so many other things. We're going to talk about laws that are anti-competitive, copyrights, trademarks. We just saw the big Monsanto case.
Patents. Right. And this is all part of a new campaign we're calling Trust Busters. Shane set up a beautiful new site.
Well, it hasn't been populated yet, but
it's there. It's a start.
We're going to start putting up clips like this. We're going to put up the different rules, ways you can get a hold of the Antitrust Division at the Department of Justice, the Federal Trade Commission, all kinds of stuff. Right now, there's just a Teddy Roosevelt
and
quote.
It's all available at trustbusters.org. We also set up a Facebook page at facebook.com/trustbusters and even a Twitter account of Bust the Trusts with an S on the end there. And what we're going to do over the next period of time, and we'll do this until we run out of things to talk about, and I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon.
And we're going to be teaching ourselves, too, because we're going to be researching and presenting it to you. I know a good amount about it, but certainly not all the nuance. I've forgotten a lot of it. But there's so much to it. Predatory pricing, conspiring to fix prices, just becoming too darn big, having too much of a market.
Right. So every week, we're going to do this segment and possibly 2 segments if we find great guests that have been party to cases like this, who have taken on the big corporations, whether it be unions or that mom and pop shop that's being pushed out by a Walmart, or, the people who have been duped by the mortgage sales of the big banks. Somebody who is a player who has a stake in these laws being utilized again, and we're going to find out how they petition the Justice Department, how they petition the Obama administration to start using these laws that are already on the books to make this country a better place. And we're going to share that information with you every week and post it at trustbusters.org.
And trustbusters.org, we're going to have a section in there where you can tell your story. If you can do it anonymously, you can do it with your name or whatever, of situations in which larger corporations, if you've had a small store that's been, pushed out, like a lot of what'll happen is a Walmart will come in and they'll have a florist shop, and the small florist in town sells flowers, has been doing it for generations.
Right.
What they'll do is they'll find out all the prices of that store, cut it by 10%, even operating at a loss at their florist shop in
because they can
Walmart,
afford to do so.
They predatorily price, force that other shop to either lower the prices and go out of business or just go out of business altogether. As soon as the shop's gone, Walmart prices go back up because they essentially establish monopolies this way.
Right.
We've seen it. You go look at Brave New Films. Brave New Films. It's right there. It's right there. But we want to know those stories. How has it affected you?
Right.
We're going to talk about different industries like water, power, natural monopolies. What can be done about them?
That term, natural monopolies, a term that I was taught in business school. A natural monopoly, a justifiable reason why one company, one organization or corporation can have unlimited power in a particular area. And all of these consolidations of power have a huge impact on our life in so many ways. When you have very few players in the insurance market, they could charge almost whatever they want to. When you have only one player that can provide electricity in your area, do you have much say in the price? Can you shop around? No. And this also deals with the Citizens United angle. It's because these corporations get so big, so out of control, that they're able to donate unlimited amounts of money to campaigns.
And then buy regulations to keep their monopoly or extend it.
Exactly. You break those companies up, all of a sudden, they can't do that.
No.
All of a sudden, they're fighting for issues only in their local area because that's what they can afford.
Right.
It's all related.
And as Teddy Roosevelt said, artificial bodies, such as corporations and joint stock or other associations that depend upon statutory law for existence or privileges, should be subject to proper governmental supervision. We're just asking for that proper governmental supervision.
Exactly.
As the law stands now.
So check it out at trustbusters.org.
We'll be building it.
We'll be building
together.
it. It'll be our project. You can submit your stories to us.
Ideas.
You can leave us comments on the Facebook page, Trustbusters, and you can put us in touch with people you think would make great guests over on Twitter at BustTheTrusts. It'll all be available through TalkingLeft.com as well, and separately on TrustBusters.org. So hopefully you guys are excited about this like we are.
Big time.
And it's a project we can all share together. There is a way we can change things without having to go through the broken Congress. And let's start pushing the president and the Justice Administration, Justice Department, to actually start pursuing some of these cases. We can do it. So don't go anywhere. You're listening to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano. Go check out trustbusters.org on the break, and we'll be right back with more in just a few minutes.
Hey, this is Hal Sparks from the Hal Sparks radio program Mega Worldwide, and you're listening to Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
No plans at all. Evil man's always transcending. Follow like sheep, swallow everything. Always simpletons or pretending.
This is your moment of clarity from LeeCamp.net. I'm going to explain to you the fraud, malfeasance, and tax evasion that the banks have used for 70 million mortgages, allowing them to foreclose on millions of homes. And then I'm going to tell you how we can stop it from continuing. It's going to take 5 whole minutes, though, but don't fret. We'll take a nose-picking break halfway through. You see, whenever a mortgage is sold from one entity to another, the parties have to pay between $40 and $75 to the local recording office. And as you recall, that whole 2008 collapse thing involved banks taking a bunch of big old turd mortgages, painting a little mustache on them, and then saying to investors, look, this is not a pile of turds. This is a gentleman with a big bushy mustache. What a nice guy. Look at him. So each time that was done, they had to pay, on average, $60. Doesn't sound like much, but each mustachioed turd pile changed hands 4 or 5 times. Still not that much money. But now multiply that by 70 million mortgages. You get about 19 or 20 billion dollars. That's roughly what would have been paid to local record offices around the country, paid to fund things like county schools, firemen, maintenance, police officers, you know, those things. And the banks thought, we're big banks. We don't contribute to society. What do we look like, Angelina Jolie feeding starving babies? Does it look like I have on sandals and a hemp necklace, mother? Do you think I bake kale and want to hug it out, bro? It'll be a cold day in hell before we... So the banks came up with a plan, an evil Rubik's Cube of obfuscation and bull. called MERS, M-E-R-S, the Mortgage Electronic Registration System. It's part of the predatory lending infrastructure devised in the mid-90s, you know, when the nation was being distracted with rappers in parachute pants. Basically, it's where the banks keep track of those 70 million mortgages changing hands from one person to another without ever telling the local recordation offices. Now, this next part is where the homeowners really get. If this were a horror movie, this would be where the funny character you liked gets his head lopped off, scooped out with a melon baller, and used as a chafing dish. So we'll call the homeowner Danny. MERS won't show Danny who owns his mortgage. So Danny is stuck trying to renegotiate his mortgage with the banks who make more in the short term from foreclosing on him than from helping him stay in his home. You may think they're trying to help you, but they're not. Ladies, it's like when a guy says he wants to help you move because all those heavy boxes, but secretly he's trying to you. Okay, you can pick your nose now, but hurry back, the good part's coming. Here's the kicker. Most of the time the banks can't prove they have the right to foreclose. But when it goes to court, it creates enough of a shell game to make the judges side with the banks. So when you put it all together, you have tax evasion, a hostile takeover of the local land record system, immense conflicts of interest, and illegal foreclosures. It's an all-star maneuver of greed. It's a groundbreaking magic trick from the magician ever. All right, kids, for this next trick, I'm going to take your mortgage and I'm going to put it in this mystery box called MERS. And when it comes out, it's not going to come out. It's vanished. But in its place, a foreclosure notice. Ta-da! Oh, don't act so unimpressed. I just took a perfectly good mortgage and turned it into trash. David Blaine dunks his head in a fish tank for 10 minutes, and he's a national hero? What does he have that I don't have? I'm still playing kids' birthday parties and while he's a superhero. Do you know how humiliating it is to do magic at a child's birthday party? You know what a 6-year-old finds to be magic? Anything, all right? His pants is magic, a spider web, earwax, sunrise. It's all magic because they don't understand science yet. It's like evangelicals. So what to do about this cancer on our system? Well, basically, every county in the country should demand the banks pay their taxes, and it would effectively kill the MERS. Also, when a bank tries to foreclose on you, demand to see the original note. Demand they prove they own your home. A lot of times, they can't. Also, at least 70 registrars around the country have already sued MERS and the banks. Learn more about this issue. I can't explain it all in 5 minutes, especially once you factor in all your nose-picking time. The description in this video will have more links in it than the Legend of Zelda, played by a one-armed toddler. So check those out. Also go to landtegrity.com and return some integrity to land ownership. And that's been your moment of clarity from LeeCamp.net. You can help MOC continue by telling your friends to subscribe at this YouTube channel. We're getting close to 20,000 subscribers, and I'm told by nerdy people that will help a lot because it will give our channel a higher ranking in YouTube's algorithm. And I'm also told an algorithm is not a heart condition. I must have had that wrong. But so tell your friends to subscribe, and thanks a lot. Keep fighting.
No plans at all. Evil man's always transcending. Fighter like sheep, swallow everything. Always simpletons or pretending.
You're listening to Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Welcome back to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano. Thank you wherever you're checking us out. RadioOrNot.com, SoFlo Radio, or of course, We Act Radio, 1480 AM, WPWC in Washington, D.C. Or thanks for checking out the podcast or the YouTube subscriptions for free. So in the last segment, we talked about Trustbusters, this new campaign that we're starting about corporations that have gotten too large and thus gotten way too much power. And we just wanted to give a couple examples of companies that we would love to see prosecuted under the FTC, companies we would love to see broken up because they are monopolies. And I think the first and foremost that comes to mind, probably not by just me, is Walmart. Walmart is a destructive, huge organization that undercuts its wages, kills businesses in the surrounding area, and pretty much abuses the environment and the worker all throughout its entire retail chain and supplier chain.
Internationally.
Yes.
As we learned recently what they were up to in Central and South America and Mexico as well.
Yeah. Just two examples from this week alone that show Walmart has too much power. It's fighting a bill in D.C. against paying people a living wage. And the same week, the NLRB files a complaint against Walmart for abusing workers that participated in the Black Friday strike. Just in 1 week.
Now, that Walmart is right here in D.C.
Yeah.
There was a hearing on that just this last week. So this generally happens, and I remember this happening upstate New York. Because we have Wegmans. Wegmans, huge, top-rated supermarket in the country. Walmart wanted to come into the Rochester area. First, they try to use zoning to keep them out. But what happens is then once Walmart gets a toehold in, they realize what kind of damage they can do in terms of wages. So they try to enact these laws that are essentially anti-Walmart laws.
Right.
And Walmart comes in with their big lawyers and, we're going to do it anyways. They're
Right.
bullies. They're so big that they're bullies.
D.C. is passing a law that says retailers over 75,000 feet with over a certain number of employees must pay a living wage far above the minimum
Whose name
wage.
starts with WAL.
It's essentially a Walmart law.
Yeah.
But because of Walmart's size and power, they have enough money to petition, to lobby, to fight this law.
Sure.
Instead of, what? Guess what? If they were broken up and smaller, they wouldn't be subject to the law. Just saying.
Just saying.
And real quickly, another example. Bank of America announced this week that because of all the settlements, yes, that privatize the gains, socialize losses that they love to do, they wrote off so many legal settlements that they got $1 billion tax refund. There's a problem with that.
And we have the second highest corporate tax rate in the world?
Exactly. They laid off 30,000 workers over the 2012, made over $75 billion, yet John Q. taxpayer is on the hook for another $1 billion so that they can get a tax refund. Maybe it's time we break up the banks.
Yeah, instead of the FDIC scooping up the small community banks that have problems because of the gambling at the larger banks and just handing them over and saying, here's another, just like the blob, just sticking it in. And just
right. I'm sure we could come up with tons more, but those are just two of the thorns in my side, if you will, Walmart and Bank of America. But we got to run to a break because we are coming back with Dean Dafis. He's the co-director of public policy for Marriage Equality USA, and he's going to be talking with us about the upcoming DOMA case before the Supreme Court. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
See, that wasn't so bad, was it? Ooh, I gotta say, that was fantastic.
It's Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
It's Thursday, March 21, 2013.
We're transforming Los Angeles from the capital of smog to the capital of sustainability.
L.A. to be 100% coal-free.
We're proud that Tennessee is a red state, but just how red are we willing to go?
Tennessee conservatives slam mountaintop removal coal mining by China. Nevada Coal Company faked air pollution reports. Green jobs, the fastest-growing job sector in the nation, plus... Leave it to beavers. Their dam has stopped an oil pipeline spill.
All of that damn news and more straight ahead. From BradBlog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comments.
Solar companies were supposed to boost our economy. Now more evidence they might be tanking our economy.
Hey, Fox News viewers, you're being lied to. Again. Do you care? This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, solar companies tanking our economy? That's what Fox News says. Really? Is it true?
No, it's not. They're referring to the consolidation in the solar industry after China dumped so many solar panels on the market, which caused a glut, which caused prices to drop, which caused a lot of companies to go into bankruptcy. It's normal finances.
Yeah, actually what they're talking about is more natural gas, please. The fossil fuel companies really want it, and they advertise here. That's what they're talking about.
Yes, they are. Well, more on the green economy in a moment. But first, a Nevada Indian tribe north of Las Vegas has uncovered evidence that a privately owned coal power plant in Nevada next to their reservation falsified mandatory pollution reports for at least 5 years. And the state knew but didn't tell them. The Moapa Band of Paiute Indians revealed documents this week showing that the Nevada State Division of Environmental Protection fired a private contractor that faked at least 5 years of air pollution data from the plant. They let the plant owners off with a warning, but didn't even tell the tribe about it at all.
How high does this go in the Nevada government? Who knew about it? The governor, the Secretary of State? Who was in on it?
We don't know. The Moapa Band is suing, so hopefully that will come out in the lawsuit. But the state agency says there really isn't a problem.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, over in Tennessee, a conservative group is taking a stand against destructive mountaintop removal coal mining, but only because it's being done by the communist Chinese.
For 6 years, Tennessee's leaders have failed to protect our God-given mountains from the mountaintop removal coal mining. And now, under their watch, Tennessee has become the first state in our great nation to permit the red Chinese to destroy our mountains and take our coal.
So all of a sudden, right-wingers are concerned about mountaintop removal mining?
Yep.
Because it's the red Chinese.
Yes, apparently that's what it takes to get them to protect their water and land.
Whatever it takes. Hey, maybe Iran will come over and do some fracking.
But the city of Los Angeles is breaking up with coal for good.
Today, the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power took action that will result in making our city 100% coal-free.
That's outgoing Los Angeles Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa in a promotional video announcing that L.A. is going to accelerate its switch away from coal to clean energy sources. The publicly owned L.A. Department of Water and Power voted this week to sell the city's financial stake in a coal-burning power plant in Arizona and convert another plant in Utah to cleaner-burning natural gas. It'll put L.A. on the path to be completely coal-free by 2025. Because the city owns its own electric utility, it has a lot more control, unlike privately owned for-profit utility companies. Good news, green jobs are the fastest growing job sector in the United States, outpacing all other industries.
Don't tell Fox.
That's according to a new report by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, who says that employment in green goods and services through 2011, the most recent data available, grew at a rate of 4 times faster than all other industries combined.
And yet on Fox, particularly Stuart Varney, he calls it nothing but a government boondoggle, these so-called green jobs.
Yep, and he would be wrong.
There's a shocker.
But Utah loves its fossil fuels. It loves its fossil fuels so much that the Utah State Division of Oil, Gas, and Mining is sponsoring a poster contest for elementary school kids to make posters praising U.S. dependence on fossil fuels in honor of Earth Day.
Oh, brother.
Winners of the Earth Day poster contest will be judged on how well they depict this year's theme, which is, quote, where would we be without oil, gas, and mining?
Oh, man. Is this a real story or is this The Onion?
This is real.
Unbelievable.
Also in Utah, leave it to beavers. Local media in Utah are calling them the hero beavers because the dams they built stopped a 6,000-gallon diesel fuel spill from reaching a freshwater reservoir and migratory bird nesting grounds on the north side of the Great Salt Lake. Officials still don't know the cause of the Chevron pipeline oil spill. It's the 3rd Chevron pipeline spill in Utah in just 3 years. The 2 hero oil-soaked beavers are now being cleaned up at a wildlife rescue center and are expected to recover.
Unbelievable. For more on that story and the other ones we couldn't get to today, please check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. And don't forget, find us and like us on the Facebook and follow us 24/7 on the Twitters at Green News Report. From bradblog.com, I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
This is Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Welcome back to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano. We are honored to be speaking with our next guest, Dean Dafis of Marriage Equality USA. He is the co-director of public policy, and you can check out all the fine work they do at marriageequality.org and at MEUSA on Twitter. Thank you so much for joining us today, Dean.
Thank you for having me both. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. We have closely covered the Supreme Court cases coming up this week on DOMA and Prop 8, and the mainstream media has lumped these two cases together, and why there is obvious reason that both are so important towards equality and so important that families are allowed to be families regardless of what their sexual orientation is. They are very different cases. And so we wanted to speak with you specifically about DOMA, which is the Windsor v. United States case, challenging the constitutionality of the Federal Defense of Marriage Act. Can you explain how this law discriminates against gay and lesbian couples and prevents them from forming the families with people that they love?
Certainly. The Defense of Marriage Act, also known in the mainstream as DOMA, D-O-M-A, was enacted back into law by Congress back in 1996, actually penned into law by then-President Bill Clinton. And the politics behind all that are quite fascinating and complex and definitely worthy of another show. But for now, basically, DOMA was enacted to federally state that as far as the federal government is concerned, only marriages between one man and one woman would be recognized as marriages for federal government purposes, meaning for rights as they have to do with Social Security and immigration and military benefits and obviously federal taxation rights and privileges, and 1,000 other rights and benefits that we have as federal citizens above and beyond just being state citizens in the country. So DOMA became law at a time when everybody in the country was freaking out because they realized that same-sex marriage was gaining some mainstream, and civil unions and domestic partnerships were beginning to pop up in various states, not at the rate that they are today, but at the time, a lot of conservatives in the country realized this was happening, that it was going to be the way of the future, and this is how DOMA came to be. So the effect of DOMA is that even in states where same-sex couples can get married, their marriages, their families are not recognized in the eyes of the federal government. The federal government can, in effect, unmarry those people. So when they go to file federal taxes, they're not recognized as a couple. They can't file a joint return. When they, military spouses, same-sex spouses would not have the same rights. Obviously, immigration would not apply either. So it became a very discriminatory law in that it created a second class of citizenship for same-sex couples around the country, even for those who are legally married in their respective states. And currently we do have same-sex marriage legal in 9 states, including the District of Columbia.
Right, and civil unions in 8 other states, or 9 other states now, I guess, with Colorado. But there are 2 sections. For people who aren't familiar specifically with DOMA, there are 2 sections. Section 2 authorizes states to develop their own laws, to authorize same-sex marriage if they'd like. And Section 3 says that regardless of what those states decide, the federal government does not have to recognize it, nor does one state have to recognize the marriage of another.
Exactly. And that is a really, really very important thing that you just touched upon, because it is an unprecedented thing that happened when the federal government came in and essentially destroyed the constitutional heritage of full faith and credit. Up until then, we have always had the full faith and credit clause of the Constitution, which allows states to acknowledge and give credit to the laws of their sister states. And for the very first time here, under Section 2, DOMA says states are allowed not to give full faith and credit to their sister states that have same-sex marriage.
Right. And now in this case, Windsor v. United States, the plaintiff in this case is Edith Windsor, who shared a life with her partner for 44 years, and then upon the death of her partner was essentially forced to pay over $350,000 in federal estate taxes when her partner's estate passed on to her, a tax that would not normally be imposed between a married couple. And in fact, they were married by their home state of New York. So this is, to me, a clear case of discrimination, of inequality, where two people were treated differently because of their sexual orientation, and to me just violates everything that our country was founded on. Now, do I have the constitutional argument correct that they're saying it's essentially they're not equally treated under federal law? That's basically the premise of the case. Is that correct?
That's the premise of the case. That is the controversy that the Supreme Court is reviewing. And that decision, that it is essentially unconstitutional to treat different classes of marriages this way, that decision has come down in 8 other federal courts already, including the Second Court of Appeals and the First Court of Appeals. So essentially already, before we even go into oral arguments on this matter on Thursday, already up and down the northeast corridor of our country, DOMA has already fallen.
Right. And some major opponents of equality have come out against DOMA, including, as you mentioned, Bill Clinton, who signed the law into effect. And quite notably, the Department of Defense came out as much as legally possible against DOMA and granted a wide list of rights and benefits that they will extend to same-sex partners. And there was a specific sentence in the announcement of those additional benefits, essentially saying that once DOMA is overturned, same-sex partners will be granted full benefits by the military. So it seems like pretty much all the major players in the game are saying DOMA should be struck down. Do you think the court will be swayed by those opinions?
Oh, absolutely. I think, it's hard to predict what the court will do, but it's impossible to accept that the court will ignore all of those opinions, the previous federal court decisions, the lower court of appeals decisions, which were very narrowly tailored, in fact. They were very conservative opinions, right, speaking specifically to Section 3 of DOMA. So it's unlikely that the court is going to ignore all of that, as well as what else is going on the ground, the incredible public opinion in favor of marriage equality, which has changed dramatically in just the past 5 years in our country. And so I think all of those things are coming into play together, when these oral arguments are happening this week.
Absolutely. And if DOMA is overturned, as it should be, and grants equality under federal law to allow families to be unified regardless of, who they love, there is a wide impact here. As you mentioned earlier, military families, which is such a big part of our country today, especially with all the war going on. There is a very large gay and lesbian population within our military, and families throughout the country. You know, anybody who works for a federal government, anybody who works for a federal organization will suddenly be allowed to claim their spouse. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct. At least that's a very reasonable interpretation of the effect of a full decision like that from the court. What we have to keep in mind here, although we have every right, as you so eloquently stated, to be incredibly enthusiastic about this, because this is very landmark indeed, without any doubt. We don't know how far the court is going to go. If the court, there's two options basically. The court can come in and expansively strike down DOMA and call for its immediate repeal. And in that case, obviously, in a decision of that magnitude, the effect of that decision is stupendously broad. And, of course, we would all welcome that. A lot of legal experts, myself included, doubt that the court will come down that expansive. It'd be a great deal if it did, but we're not sure.
Right.
What's likely here to happen in terms of the decision is that the court will affirm the Court of Appeals in saying that Section 3 of DOMA is unconstitutional because it unmarries certain gay couples who are already married in those respective states where they can legally marry. And we, as the federal government, need to recognize those gay couples. You know, there's also the 10th Amendment issue here playing into this, not just constitutional arguments on equal protection grounds about federalism and how, you know, in the history of our country, marriage has also always been relegated to the states. Every single state decides how one goes about getting a marriage license and how they get married. And every state has slightly different requirements, waiting periods, residency requirements, biological testing in some cases, this, that, and the other. But it always has been a state's right, always relegated to the states.
Absolutely. And although I think, at least I hope, that if not this case, that very soon in our future, it is a federally guaranteed right to every individual, regardless of who they love. Just a reminder, we are speaking with Dean Dafis. He is the co-director of public policy for Marriage Equality USA. In the minute or so we have left, Dean, why don't you tell us how people can get involved with Marriage Equality USA and how they can support this fight that, even if these cases are decided in the favor of equality, still has a long way to go?
Absolutely. It's really important for people to get involved. It really is in a very exciting time. And even in states where this issue has not been dealt with yet, there are no constitutional amendments against it or public referendums against it. A state like Pennsylvania, for instance, currently has no movement on the marriage equality issue in either direction. People need to get involved. It is our civil rights. It is the civil rights issue of our generation, and it's very important for everyone to get involved, and it's very easy to do so. You can do something in your own city, in your own town, in your own little area of the world. If you go to meusa.org, you can get connected with an equality group in your particular state, and you can help by on-the-ground work, grassroots organizing, passing out a couple leaflets, helping a phone bank, on a particular weekend, an hour or two, whatever you can do is really, really important, because what has happened here, the reason why we're going to be before the Supreme Court finally this week is only because people went out there and knocked on doors and made phone calls and rallied and rallied and rallied and got the country to change its mind on this issue. And this is the only reason why the Supreme Court has decided, wow, we have a serious civil rights issue here in this country that we have to put our heads together and decide. And it's only because of people going out there and helping. And that's how you do it.
I couldn't have said it better myself. We are firm believers in getting active and getting involved in the issues you support. And with organizations like Marriage Equality USA, people can get involved in this fight. And thank you, Dean, not just for joining us this morning, but for the fine work that you guys do and fighting the good fight on behalf of equality for everybody in our country. It really is historical, and it's amazing what you guys do.
Well, thank you very much for having me. It's been a real fun pleasure speaking with you both.
Absolutely. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Dean Dafis, everybody. You can find out more at marriageequality.org. You can follow them on Twitter at MEUSA. And as usual, all the links will be posted on talkingleft.com after the show. We've got more in store and another great interview coming up, so don't go anywhere. You're listening to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano, and we'll be right back.
It's our last errand today, Jimmy. Just need to pick up some light bulbs.
Whoa, there's so many. Did Grandma tell you which ones to buy?
No, but check out the label on this package. It'll help us find the right bulbs.
Does it really matter?
Well, sure. The new light bulbs use a lot less energy, so we save money on our electric bill by using an energy-saving incandescent, CFL, or LED.
How about this bulb?
Let's see. We need to replace the 60-watt bulbs in our bedside lamps. That one is 800 lumens, so it should do the trick.
I've never heard of lumens.
Lumens tell us how bright the light is. The more lumens, the brighter the bulb.
You know, Grandpa, you're a pretty bright guy.
Yeah, you're pretty smart yourself, Jimmy.
Lumens, the new way to shop for light. Learn more at EnergySavers.gov. That's EnergySavers.gov. A message from the U.S. Department of Energy.
You may be hearing about people having trouble making mortgage payments and risking losing their homes. Many of them just aren't aware of the options that can prevent foreclosure. There are many options available to homeowners, such as repayment and forbearance plans, loan modifications, and even refinancing. Where does someone go for help? They should talk directly with their lender or a qualified HUD-approved counseling agency. Both can provide helpful information without charging a fee. According to PMI Mortgage Insurance Company, it's not a good idea to pay for services that you can get for free from a lender or a qualified nonprofit counseling agency. To learn more, visit homesafepmi.com or call HUD at 1-800-569-4287 for a counseling agency near you. That's 1-800-569-4287. This message is brought to you by PMI, supporting sustainable home ownership that strengthens communities.
Friends, David Schuster here, and all of us at WEAC Radio are so proud of our neighbors here in Southeast D.C., especially one of our partners, the ARC. The ARC is at 1901 Mississippi Avenue Southeast. It's the home to some of Washington's best, including the Washington Ballet, the Levine School of Music, Boys and Girls Club, and the Children's Health Project. All provide a number of programs and services within the very same facility. The ARC is also home to the ARC Theater, the only theater east of the river, which hosts a variety of dance, music, and theatrical shows each year. Almost everything you could want is at the ARC, so stop by and see them. The ARC, 1901 Mississippi Avenue in Southeast. For more information, visit the ARC's website, www.thearcdc.org, or call 202-889-5901. The ARC, part of Southeast D.C.
This is Stephanie Miller.
Hi, this is Tom Harmon.
Hello, everybody. I'm David Schuster of Take Action News.
I'm Brad Friedman of BradBlog.com.
Hi, I'm cartoonist and agent provocateur P.S. Mueller.
This is Nicole Bell of crooksandliars.com, and this is...
You're listening to
and watching
Filter Free Radio.
Filter Free Radio.
Filter Free Radio with Jacob Dean and Skeptical Scott.
Jacob Dean. With Jacob Dean and Skeptical Scott.
Great presidents aren't born, they are made. We've got to push people. They don't jump out in front of a parade if there's not a parade there. That is political suicide. The parade, metaphorically, already has to be in the streets with the picket signs saying, we need progressive talk in Portland, or we need marriage equality in Washington, or we need marijuana legalization in Colorado, you know, whatever.
Trans-Canada Pipeline.
Stop the pipeline. We have to push for our positions because they're not just going to out of thin air.
FilterFreeRadio.com.
You're listening to Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Welcome back to Talking Left. Great speaking with Dean Dafis of Marriage Equality USA.
I really enjoyed that.
I
learned a lot.
Fine work that they do, and you can check it out at marriageequality.org.
And something that wasn't mentioned during that interview, though, because I was looking at the website yesterday, they're going to be having rallies out front of the Supreme Court. So if you're in D.C., support equality. Get out there, 8:30 in the morning, both Tuesday and Wednesday this week, because those are the days that the cases are being heard.
Absolutely. So all of our We Act radio listeners, go and support equality out on the front steps of the Supreme Court Tuesday and Wednesday.
Bring a sign, bring a voice.
Yes.
Do something.
That is your campaign contribution right there, your time.
There you go.
Just to call back to earlier in the show. So, we don't know how these cases are going to turn out. We can predict, and we'll make our prediction after we talk to Ian Millhiser of ThinkProgress in just a few minutes.
And we'll have further predictions next week after the arguments.
Yes.
I encourage everyone, by the way, I know I'm going sideways again, unlike a lot of other cases, go to Supreme Court. Do a search for Supreme Court on your computer at 1 p.m. on Tuesday, at 1 p.m. on Wednesday. They will have the audio tapes of the arguments. Play them. Listen to them. You don't have to know what every voice is or who's Kennedy and who's Roberts or all that. Listen to them, because it's one of those glimpses into the Supreme Court, because it's such a closed place. There's no cameras. And sometimes they put out audio, sometimes they don't. I know, but it's worthwhile. And hopefully a lot of the radio shows would be playing clips from that, the important stuff. So, find out what's going on in there.
We all, get our Supreme Court fix vicariously through you, Shano.
But I think if you have the time and you're really interested in it, it's worthwhile.
Yes.
It really is.
But the one thing I want to say before we even talk about Prop 8 and before we give you our predictions for what may happen is that regardless of the outcome, regardless of how the Supreme Court rules on either of these cases, the tide in this country is changing. And they may not make the right decision. They may not vote on the side of equality. But it will happen. At some point in this country, it will happen. Just this week, a new ABC poll said 58% of Americans now say it should be legal for gay and lesbian couples to marry. Just in 2004, that number was only 32%. So in less than a decade, it's gone up 20 points.
It's fantastic.
Yes. And it just keeps growing, regardless of religious organization, political affiliation, whatever the case may be. More and more people are standing on the side of equality. So the court may not make the right decision on this, but eventually in our country, we will.
We are making it.
Yes.
And the thing is we're realizing, the far right, the conservatives have used, first they use the icky, then they use it's going to hurt marriage in general.
Right.
We have to protect. It's called the Defense of Marriage Act, which is completely not what it is.
Yeah, if you really wanted to defend marriage, you would make more people want to get married.
But as we have these marriages happening in states, civil rights are not a zero-sum game. Property rights are. Property. Not everyone can own
the same piece of property.
But civil rights are not a zero-sum game. If I gain a civil rights, that doesn't mean that you lose one. In fact, it's quite the opposite. When we extend civil rights, we become more free, each and every one of us. So this means a lot to straight marriage too, because freedom is not a zero-sum game, as I said.
Exactly.
I really believe that.
Very well said, Shano. We are going to be running to a break and coming back with Ian Millhiser of the Center for American Progress's blog, the ThinkProgress blog, and we're going to be talking to him about Prop 8, get a little background, and what his brilliant predictions may be. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back here on Talking Left. Stick around.
I've seen the show. It's excellent.
It's Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Senator Rand Paul is not the only speed bump slowing down the push by government contractors, police authorities, and politicians of both parties to bring military drones to America. In his recent filibuster, Paul delivered a 13-hour rant against the idea of littering our airspace with thousands of these surreptitious unmanned aircraft, which inevitably will be used to spy on, invade the constitutional rights of, and even fire on American citizens. While the senator's outrage raised the drone issue to a new level of public awareness, opposition had already been percolating across the country, uniting such diverse constituencies as the ACLU and the Tea Party. Indeed, from city halls to Congress, many officials are trying to ban or at least restrict drone deployment in our land of the free. Clearly, the drone industrial complex has a growing political problem. But hey, in corporate America, where there's a way, there's plenty of will. We're talking extremely big dollars here. As reported by the New Republic, drone pushers at an industry confab, ominously titled The Reapers Come Home, decided that theirs is merely an image problem, starting with the off-putting D word itself. That term drone kills us every time, moaned a police official. Another pusher suggested that the menacing black color of the weapons is the problem. He noted that Seattle's police chief tried to get city officials to okay drone use by having one painted pink and rechristening it as Soft Kitty 2000. This is Jim Hightower saying that didn't work in Seattle, but still, the droner complex can be expected to launch a PR campaign that'll make you want to hug one of their machines. Already, the peddlers are describing a sky full of drones over your city as, quote, a nice safety blanket. Good luck living under that.
If you like these feisty pops of populism that Hightower zings out on the airwaves, check out the Hightower Lowdown. Jim's monthly newsletter provides the in-depth lowdown on what the greed heads of Wall Street and the boneheads of Washington are doing to us behind the scenes. With Hightower's saucy Texas humor and truth-telling populist perspective, the lowdown literally can lift you up. And get this, you can have the lowdown delivered to your mailbox or email each month for only $15 a year. Yes, 12 issues, only $15. Check it out, hightowerlowdown.org.
You're listening to WIN, Workers Independent News, a production of Diversified Media Enterprises. I'm Doug Cunningham. Thousands of Chicago parents, students, teachers, and workers are organizing a rally for March 27th to protest the announced closings of 50 Chicago schools. Unite Here Local 1, SEIU Local 1, the Chicago Teachers Union, and a number of community organizations are uniting in opposition to the closings. Tom Balanoff is president of SEIU Local 1.
This school reform is really about creating a system where the top 20% of the kids are educated because we need engineers, we need attorneys, and the other 80% of kids are just lost. Combining schools does not do anything to enhance education. It creates great disruption in communities. It adversely affects workers both in the schools as well as in the communities, and it's the wrong direction, not only for Chicago, but it's the wrong direction for this country in terms of how we're dealing with public education.
Lourdes Gonzalez is a custodian at Roberto Clemente High School in Chicago.
My kids' schools are going to be crowded because of these closing schools. And as a custodian, I'm going to have hard work because then I have to go to the school to bring them and then come back to work and everything. And I have another person to pick them up. And when I come out of work, I have to go to pick them up in a friend's house and then go back to home. And it's going to be harder for me. If he continue closing the schools, it's going to affect everybody. It's not only the people that are working in these schools or the kids. It's going to affect the neighborhoods, and it's going to affect the whole city.
Civilian federal employees who fall into arrears with tax payments could end up on the unemployment line. Jesse Russell reports.
Republican-penned legislation, the Federal Employee Tax Accountability Act, moved out of the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee on Wednesday. The bill would lead to the termination of any federal workers who had a tax lien with the federal government. It also requires prospective employees to certify that they have no delinquent tax debt. Federal employees with tax debt have been on the rise since the start of the recession, and it jumped significantly in 2011, the same year a federal pay freeze kicked in. That pay freeze was was recently extended for a third year. It also comes on top of hundreds of thousands of federal employees facing a forced 20% pay cut due to furloughs triggered by sequester cuts. According to numbers released by the Internal Revenue Service, federal workers have a delinquency rate of 3.2%. The delinquency rate for non-federal workers in the United States is 8.2%. The number of tax delinquencies among employees of the House of Representatives is above average at 3.7%. According to the Washington Post, additional data from the IRS show that only 0.4% of federal employees currently have tax liens.
You've been listening to WIN, Workers Independent News. For more information, visit laborradio.org.
Confessions of a Potentially Perfect Parent, brought to you by adoptuskids.org.
I don't know how to talk like a parent. Don't make me come back there. You see what I mean? It's pretty awful. Try it again. Don't make me come back there. Now that's pretty good. That one kind of sounded like my dad. Weird.
You don't have to be perfect to be a perfect parent. There are thousands of teens in foster care who would love to put up with you. Call 1-888-200-4005 or visit adoptuskids.org for more information. A message from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt Us Kids, and the Ad Council.
You're listening to Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Welcome back to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano. Joining us now is somebody we are always honored and thrilled to speak with, Ian Millhiser of the Center for American Progress's ThinkProgress blog. And as your Twitter says, Ian, you are the constitutional law guy, a title I can't tell you how much I love.
Well, thank you. It's good to be here.
Absolutely. We've been covering DOMA and Prop 8, the big Supreme Court cases coming up this week, and we just spoke with someone from the Marriage Equality USA about DOMA, and we were hoping you could help us learn a little bit about Prop 8. How is it that Prop 8 came into effect? Do you know the background on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So what happened was you had a California Supreme Court decision which said rather sensibly that, yes, the California Constitution does require gay people to be treated like anyone else, and that means that they have the right to marry the people they want to marry. And shortly after that happened, you had marriage equality in effect, I think, for a little less than a year in California. And then this anti-gay ballot initiative got on the ballot. It barely passed, and that took away marriage equality from all these people who already had it. So one of the questions in this case is whether a state is allowed to do that, whether a state is allowed to take away from gay couples this right to equality that had already been given to them.
Right. It seems counterintuitive to me that civil rights would be put up for a vote. Many civil rights throughout our nation's history likely would not have passed if it was left up to the voters. It was that wiser minority that said, we need to treat X people as equals, as individuals, as humans, and it seems to be the case with marriage equality. I know there was a big push from the Mormon Church and other religious organizations to not only get this Prop 8 on the ballot, but to make sure it passed as well. What's the deal there with separation of church and state? Isn't that an inherent violation of, churches getting involved in the political process?
Well, I don't know if it's so much a church-state issue as much as it's an equality issue. I mean, religious people are allowed to lobby the government. They're allowed to vote the way they want to vote. But the reason we have a constitution is, you're exactly right, there's certain things that aren't up for a vote. And one of them is the equal dignity of all Americans. The Constitution says that no person may be denied the equal protection of the laws. And when it says no person, that means gay people too.
Yes.
The Constitution is very clear about this, that there is a right to equality in this nation, and that is not up to a vote, no matter who supports it.
So the case before the court this week is Hollingsworth v. Perry, and it was essentially two gay couples in California that were denied a marriage license after that Prop 8 had come into effect. What do you think the issue of states' rights is here. Is that what the opposing party is going to argue, that this is a states' rights issue to deny equality?
I mean, that's what they're going to try to argue, and they should lose. That's the rhetoric. That's some of the rhetoric you hear from the other side, that we should let each state decide whether or not it complies with the Constitution, and that's just not how our Constitution works. What the 14th Amendment says is it says no state shall deny any person the equal protection of the law. No state. Not the states that really hate the gay people, not the states that are more liberal or more conservative, all states. No state may deny the equal protection of the laws. And so that's about as clear as it can come. When it comes to these basic questions of equality under the Constitution, this is not a states' rights issue. It's a question of whether the Constitution applies in all 50 states, or whether states can pick and choose which parts of the Constitution they feel like complying with.
Well said. I'm curious of your take, because you are quite knowledgeable on the Constitution. I'm wondering what the chances are here of DOMA being overturned, the federal case against gay marriage, and Proposition being upheld. And if that were to happen, where federal supremacy falls into the argument.
Right. So, I mean, there are some theories that have been advanced that could lead to DOMA being struck down and Prop 8 being upheld. Some of them are really frightening, actually. What DOMA does, what the Defense of Marriage Act does, is it just says who gets federal tax benefits and who doesn't, and who gets things like Social Security and Medicare benefits. And setting aside the Constitution's guarantee of equality, the Constitution is really clear that the federal government gets to decide who pays taxes and who doesn't, and gets to decide who gets Social Security benefits and who doesn't. So if the Supreme Court were to roll that back, it could have very frightening consequences. It could lead to Social Security being declared unconstitutional in the most absurd example. So I don't think that's likely. I think that the Constitution is very clear that the rule that applies, that equality is the rule in this country. I think that Supreme Court decision has been very clear that we have the same equality rule at the federal level that we have at the state level. And I think that both laws are going to go down because there really isn't a coherent way that you could strike down DOMA and still uphold Prop 8.
Right, and Prop 8 has been essentially deemed unconstitutional by court after court after court. Not the most recent, but the most notable was Judge Von Walker, who they tried to challenge, if I'm correct, Ian, just because he was gay, they said he should recuse himself from the case?
Right. Clarence Thomas is openly black, and we don't require him to recuse from cases where there's racial discrimination alleged. And Justice Ginsburg is openly a woman, and we don't require her to recuse herself from cases where there's gender discrimination involved. So, the idea that we would tell a gay judge, whether open or closeted, that they are not allowed to hear that they are not allowed to hear a gay rights case is absurd and offensive, and I'm glad that it went nowhere when it was raised in the lower courts.
You picked out the exact example that I was going to suggest. You said it much more brilliantly than I could, but Clarence Thomas was eligible and able to hear the case on the Voting Rights Act that recently came before the court, and he shouldn't have recused himself because he was black. So Judge Von Walker had every right to rule on the case and ruled in the case of equality. I said before you came on in a very short segment that the tide in this country is changing. And would you agree, regardless of how these cases turn out, say the Supreme Court doesn't strike down these rules, eventually in this country, equality will be the law of the land. Do you think that's the case?
Marriage equality is coming. I mean, the most recent poll I've seen showed 58% of the country supports marriage equality, and it's almost 8 in 10, I believe, of young people, voters under 30, support it. So marriage equality is coming. But the question in these cases isn't what the poll says. The question in these cases is whether or not we have to follow our Constitution. And again, the Constitution says that no person shall be denied the equal protection of the law What the Supreme Court has said in the past is that groups that have been subject to what they call purposeful unequal treatment, or that have been handicapped because of stereotypes that have nothing to do with their ability to contribute to society, are entitled to heightened protection under the Constitution. And that's what the court should recognize here, is that gay people undoubtedly fit the criteria for heightened protection. And for that reason, the Supreme Court should strike down anti-gay laws. Well,
there are currently, just to remind everybody, we're speaking with Ian Millhiser of the Center for American Progress's ThinkProgress blog. He is the constitutional law guy. I just love that title. But currently there are 31 states in our nation that have laws specifically outlawing gay marriage. If DOMA goes down, as it should, and the court says gay and lesbian people are equal under the law as they should be, do you expect that more of those laws will be challenged as unconstitutional and thus pave the way for gay marriage in all of those states?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I certainly think unless the Supreme Court does what it should do and just say that marriage equality is the law of the land, there's going to be more lawsuits that follow up. The magic words to look for in this opinion are two words: heightened scrutiny. Heightened scrutiny means that if anti-gay laws are subject to heightened scrutiny, it means that any court decision has to look at them with extreme skepticism, that any anti-gay law would then come to the courts with a presumption that it's unconstitutional. And that's a big deal. Once you get that, we are almost all the way to getting marriage equality throughout the country. If you don't see those two magic words, and Justice Kennedy, who's a very conservative justice who's been good in the past on gay rights, has often found very narrow grounds to strike down anti-gay laws. If you don't have those two magic words, then you could have a bit of more of a dogfight to figure out how we're going to get marriage equality in places like Alabama. But it's going to happen. And if we see those two magic words, heightened scrutiny in the opinion, then it's going to happen really soon.
Well, from your lips to God's ears, Ian, I certainly hope that's the case. Your prediction, you said, is that both laws will be overturned?
I think that's right. I mean, I just don't see, setting aside what the Constitution says, I think there are 5 votes who've been pretty consistent, and strong on gay rights. Even Justice Kennedy, who is normally a very extreme conservative, this is one of the few issues that he's genuinely moderate on. I think we're likely to get him to be the 5th vote to strike them down.
Well, we will certainly have fingers, toes, and anything else we can have crossed. Shane is asking me if you're going to be at the Supreme Court or anybody else representing ThinkProgress. Are you going to be there to hear the arguments?
I'm planning to be at the court to hear the oral arguments, so I'll have some thoughts up on ThinkProgress shortly after they happen.
Absolutely. Great. Hopefully you could touch base. Shane will be there as well, and he'll look for you.
I'll be reading ThinkProgress blog afterwards.
Yes. So,
all right, sounds great.
Thank you so much, Ian. Thank you for all the fine work that you guys do, and it's always an honor and a pleasure to speak with you.
It's great talking with you as well.
Have a great afternoon. Ian Millhiser, you can follow him personally on Twitter at @iMillhiser, and follow all his great work at ThinkProgress. All the links, as usual, will be up after the show.
Yet again, I learned something.
You always learn something from Ian.
Yes, it's true. It is absolutely true. Actually, I want to touch a little bit on what he's talking about, that scrutiny test, when we come back.
Okay,
it's really
great.
Cool.
We will do that. We've got just a few more minutes here on Talking Left, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back with more. Stick around.
Whoa! Awesome! Totally awesome! All right!
It's Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Hi, this is Brad Friedman, your friendly citizen investigative blogger, journalist, troublemaker, muckraker, and all-around swell fellow from BradBlog.com. Join me for the Bradcast every Wednesday from 3 to 4 p.m. 1 hour of troublemaking and muckraking ripped from the pages of BradBlog.com and sometimes from the dark recesses of my mind. We'll have investigative interviews with newsmakers, we'll call out the liars, frauds, and phonies, and we'll even give kudos to the good guys if we can find any. Stories you won't hear anywhere else. We'll report on politics, elections, election reform, mainstream corporate media failure, media reform, global warming denialism, and everything before, during, and after. Join me for the Bradcast every Wednesday, now a full hour, 3 to 4 p.m., right here on Pacifica Radio's KPFK and coast to coast and around the globe on kpfk.org.
You're listening to and watching
Filter Free Radio.
Filter Free Radio.
Filter Free Radio with Jacob Dean and Skeptical Scott.
Jacob Dean.
With Jacob Dean and Skeptical Scott.
It's a redefining of the issue of not just the fact that, oh, it's my fault, I need to go buy a Prius. I should get an electric car. No, it's my fault for not stopping car culture as a whole. We don't need cars. I should have far greater technology right now than the internal combustion engine. It's 100-year-old technology.
Where is my jetpack?
Exactly. But you get the point. The issue is far larger than just recycling or driving a hybrid. It's stopping the manufacturing of these systems, these industries. They need to stop. You know, we will never have national health care guaranteed as a right for all as long as we have insurance companies that make money off of us. So the insurance companies need to go away. We don't need insurance companies. We need health care. You know, it's the whole health insurance reform. What a lie that is, because we need health care reform. And the list goes on. So it's redefine the issue and redefine the argument.
FilterFreeRadio.com.
Would you like to secure stable employment, affordable, high-quality child care, or an opportunity to serve your community through meaningful volunteer and internship experiences? If so, UPO is the place for you. Hello, I'm Andrea Thomas, Vice President of Administration and Chief of Staff for UPO. As the Community Action Agency for Washington, D.C., UPO has proudly served the residents of Washington for the past 50 years. Annually, we impact the lives of nearly 100,000 Washingtonians, 100,000 people advancing their education, securing employment, maintaining housing stability, and investing in their communities through volunteerism. Our vision is a Washington of thriving communities and self-sufficient residents. To learn more about our services and how you can partner with us or donate, visit us at www.upo.org. UPO, where we are uniting people with opportunities.
Hi, this is Tim Cormall from The Tim Cormall Show. Join me and my guests most weeks for a progressive roundtable discussion about politics, news, and other fun topics. We laugh a lot about the hilarious antics of the right-wing nutjobs, as well as have serious discussions about issues affecting all of our lives. You can check out The Tim Cormall Show at timcormall.com, and you can subscribe to the show for free in iTunes by searching for The Tim Cormall Show. You can also follow me on Twitter at twitter.com/Tim Cormall. That's CORRIMAL. So come on over and join in the fun at timcormall.com.
Hey! Are you living in a progressive talk void? If so, be sure to visit leftwingradiosstations.com. The state-by-state listing is a quick and easy way to find any left-wing talk radio station across America, from sea to shining sea. Your progressive talk nirvana is only a click away at leftwingradiosstations.com. Be sure to like Left Wing Radio Stations on Facebook and share it with your friends. leftwingradiosstations.com. United we stand.
SoFloRadio.com remains on the air with free archives thanks to the support of our listeners. Help keep us on the air by clicking the donate button on SoFloRadio.com. And thank you for your generous support.
You're listening to Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Yes, you are. Welcome back to Talking Left. We are live on RadioOrNot.com, SoFlo Radio, and of course, We Act Radio, 1480 AM WPWC in Washington, D.C.
Unless, of course, you are listening to a repeat or the podcast.
Which we still thank you for. We were just talking to Ian Millhiser of ThinkProgress about DOMA and Prop 8, and he mentioned a term, heightened scrutiny, that the cases should be decided based on the heightened scrutiny, that they should be given more care than...
Those words, yeah, I need to want to explain. There's three different levels of scrutiny the Supreme Court can give a question of usually it's equal rights, sometimes it's Fifth Amendment, 14th Amendment protections. And the three of them are, he was talking about what's called intermediate scrutiny, heightened scrutiny. The lowest level is called rational basis, and the highest is called strict scrutiny. Strict scrutiny would be a case in which is a protected class. They're called a suspect classification, race, gender. What Ian was saying is that we should have, and if they use this heightened level, that it's a higher hurdle for these state laws to pass in order to be constitutional, which means that they have to further an important government interest in a way that is substantially related to that interest. Now, I know that sounds like gobbledygook, but it's
well, that was the basis they used to pass DOMA. You know, they said that it actually that there is they didn't.
But you have to then articulate in order to fulfill that what that important government interest is.
Right. DOMA was passed in '96, specifically stating it advances the government's interest in defending and nurturing the institution of traditional heterosexual marriage.
Is that though a reasonable government interest?
I certainly think no.
And is it substantially related? You have to prove that not allowing, you have to prove then, therefore, the people who want to say it's constitutional, you have to prove that by not allowing gay couples to get married, that you are therefore making straight couples' marriages stronger, which they can't.
Yeah,
so they can't. So
insane.
It's just not it's a higher standard, which would make it easier to strike these suckers down.
I have a question, Shane. You just mentioned that race, gender, etc., is covered under strict scrutiny, a higher level than what Ian was mentioning, correct?
Right. Sometimes national origin.
Right. But now, haven't LGBT people been put into that protected class?
Only in certain states. California actually is one of them. That's another ongoing fight for that to make. For example, in a lot of states, you can fire somebody for being gay.
Yes, Florida is one of them.
California is not. There is not a federal recognition of sexual orientation as a suspect classification, something that there are people fighting for.
Well,
that's in something
it just goes to show that even if these cases are decided in the correct favor, in the favor of equality, of letting people create the families that they choose and being with the people that they love, even if those go the right way, there's still a long fight, and we need these great groups like ThinkProgress, like Center for American Progress, like Marriage Equality USA, and so many more that are out there. We need to support them and participate.
Because when we extend those rights, we all are freer.
Right. There's still a long way to go. And one of the people that is fighting the good fight, and I'm sure lots of people have heard this story, but it's so awesome we had to talk about it again, is Aaron Jackson. He is a founding member of an organization called Planting Peace. It's a multi-pronged charity that works with opening orphanages throughout the world, rainforest conservation, and several other great causes. Well, Aaron happened to notice that the house across from the Westboro Baptist Church was for sale, and he bought it.
And we know, remind everyone, Westboro Baptist, for who don't remember.
Westboro, I will not say their words, but God hates gays, we'll say.
Right.
They use another derogatory
disgusting
term.
Protests.
Yes. They protest soldiers, funerals. They protested the kids killed in the Newtown tragedy, just to let you know how really thoroughly disgusting they are.
They have the right to say it, but we have the right to fight back against it. They're ridiculous.
Well, Aaron Jackson is fighting back in an awesome, fabulous way. He bought the house across the street from the Westboro Baptist Church for roughly $83,000, and he painted that thing the color of the pride flag. A beautiful paint job, if you ask me.
Yes.
Absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah.
He painted the house, the rainbow flag. He is using it to start a new nonprofit called Equality House that helps volunteers and other charity members while they're working in the area and supports anti-bullying causes, which is a big issue in our country. We run some anti-bullying ads on this show. But talk about standing in the face of adversity. The best part is he said that he's flying a huge pride flag out front of the new Equality House in opposition to the Westboro Baptist Church's upside-down American flag, which is a sign of distress, for anybody who doesn't know. It's very, you don't do that with the country's flag. Well, but he said, according to Jackson, it looks like the United Nations is having a standoff with flags. These flag poles are huge. They know we've forked out big money for this. So he's awesome. He's my new hero. Many thanks to Aaron Jackson for his fine work, to all our great guests, Al Brooks, Carl Willis of PwC Dems, Dean Dafis of Marriage Equality USA, Ian Millhiser of ThinkProgress. Check out trustbusters.org. Thanks to Nicole Sandler, Alex Lawson, Kimon Freeman, Pete Callahan, George Rodriguez, Daniel Marins, Rocky Mountain Mike, and of course, to you, the listener, for checking out the show. Go like us on Facebook and Twitter. We'll see you next week.